Good morning. I have been asked to remind the board before we start any other business that when you speak into the microphone, please be somewhat close to it, and everybody can then hear properly. Jane will start by asking you to take the roll, please.
Regent Bartel.
I'm here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Drew. Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Falbo.
Here.
Regent Higgins.
Here.
Regent Manydeeds.
Here.
Regent Pointer.
Here.
Regent Pruitt. Regent Roberts. Regent Shervin. Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector. Regent Tyler. Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. Regent Whitburn. A quorum is present.
It's with great pleasure that the Board of Regents opens its April 2012 meeting here in Superior. And I would say to you that we now appreciate how far people drive to come to Madison. And we applaud them in turn for all that they do. On behalf of my colleagues, I thank Chancellor Wachter and the many others here at UW-Superior for their great hospitality and warm welcome. We especially appreciate that warm part because we all know that it could have been much different. In my case, I have an especially warm feeling for UW-Superior because it is the only UW system school during my 7 years on the board at which I was a full-fledged mid-year commencement speaker. The time was December 2007. The low temperature that day was minus 18 degrees, and my motel room was adjacent to those of the entire Thunder Bay, Ontario Middle School hockey team. I was entertained by Chancellor Erlenbach and Nick Sloboda in both Superior and Duluth and had a great time. So I'm very pleased to be back. Now, Kevin, I think you're going to acknowledge someone.
I do, and thank you, President Spector. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all on the board and everybody else. Great to be back in Superior in this wonderful new facility that you proudly have now. I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge a familiar face in our midst who now holds a new title. So I'm pleased to welcome UW-Milwaukee Provost and Vice Chancellor, full-time, permanent, eternal now Provost and Vice Chancellor at UW-Milwaukee, Johannes Britz. Congratulations on getting the job. Back to you, Mike.
We start our meeting today with a presentation by Chancellor Wachter on behalf of our hosts, so I'm going to turn it over to her to begin.
On behalf of the faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends of the university, we want to welcome you to Superior and the University of Wisconsin-Superior. We're so pleased to be able to show you today that the investment in the citizens of northern Wisconsin has resulted in an institution that's rich in programs, people, and places. And I hear that some of you had quite the omnibus travel experience last night, so we're very happy to see you with us this morning. What you'll see is that the university has evolved quite dramatically since its opening as a normal school, especially and most recently with the movement to the designation of the liberal arts. Today really is a celebration of the core mission of the institution and how we're able to leverage it for partnerships for progress. We believe that the university should be a seamless member of its community. From the work of the Small Business Development Center with emerging and existing businesses, to theater and music productions which occur throughout the year, and camps which happen in the summer, to our continuing education and Rhodes Scholar program, we work to support economic, cultural, and intellectual well-being of the region. Our student athletes also should be mentioned as they're strong supporters and contributors, and their efforts range from community cleanups to charity fundraisers. Most recently, we signed the Northward Memorandum of Understanding, a cooperative effort between 8 of our educational institutions in the North, aimed squarely at supporting economic development and the facilitation of seamless educational pathways for students. And you'll hear more about that consortium on the Friday Ready Committee meeting. Now, as a chancellor, you know that I could wax on and on about the impact of the institution, but I think the effect is much more powerful if you hear it from the partners themselves. So we've prepared, with the help of some of our regional allies, a short video which presents an overview of the roots of the university and the meaning of the university to the Northland citizens and its students. In 1893, Wisconsin legislators identified the need for a teacher training school in northern Wisconsin. Learning of this opportunity, the people of Superior began a vigorous campaign to persuade lawmakers to locate the school in their growing city. These forward-thinking citizens knew that a college would be an invaluable partner in the progress of their community. Superior Normal School opened in 1896. The community and the school that would evolve into the University of Wisconsin-Superior have been partners ever since. As UW-Superior has advanced, so have our collaborations with the community. But throughout our 120-year history, the Wisconsin idea that a university should improve people's lives beyond the classroom has remained a stalwart in our development. It is the foundation of our many partnerships for progress. From the beginning, UW-Superior has been instrumental in the training of educators, teachers, and administrators who have enhanced the lives of countless students in the school district of Superior and other districts throughout the state of Wisconsin.
We're working specifically with the teacher education department to help them have a better understanding of what we expect of all of our teachers.
So our students are at Northern Lights Elementary School for the most part, but the goal is for those students to go in and develop a relationship with children in one classroom.
It's so nice to be able to actually go and work with the students, and I feel like this is just going to better prepare us to become more productive members in the community and better teachers.
Located in the heart of the city of Superior, UW-Superior profoundly impacts northern Wisconsin culturally and economically, and has long been a center of music, the arts, and athletics for the region.
What I see it bringing is a lot of energy to our area, some culture, some ethnicity. I see those things that are brought by having the university.
I can't imagine this community without UWS. When you look at it from a standpoint, from an employee standpoint, it's one of our largest employers. So again, if you were to translate that into a manufacturer or something like that, you know, communities would do backflips over to get something like this.
A partnership, by definition, is a mutually beneficial relationship. The people of Superior support our curricular and extracurricular programs. In return, UW-Superior students, faculty, and staff are involved in the community through academic service learning projects, internships, and outreach programs.
They don't have to give dollars. They can give their time. They can give their expertise. So that's not just about money, it's about helping people. And if I can get that message to college students, that's the value of this.
We help with the Superior High School. We do this all year long. What we do is we go in, and senior projects at the Superior High School have to do capstone projects. And so what we do is spend the whole afternoon evaluating senior projects. We really do have to branch out even to the Superior community and say, hey, we have this going on. And it's sort of like, if we do this for you, we are hoping that you could be like a fan base for us and support us through our season.
Some of UW-Superior's most valued partnerships are with the business community, both locally and regionally. UW-Superior houses the nationally recognized Transportation and Logistics Research Center that applies research and provides advisory services that advance the economy of the region. This center, along with our Lake Superior Research Institute, the Great Lakes Maritime Research Institute, and our partnership with the Lake Superior National Estuarine Research Reserve, also provide unique and invaluable learning opportunities for our students.
Part of the reason that this major has been so successful is its position in the Twin Ports, which is a transportation hub.
One of the hands-on experiences we got to be involved with through the program was a visit to one of the 1,000-foot ships on Lake Superior, the GOT.
So the students are immersed in this ship and they get to go through every part of it. If we say, well, we'd like to go down and take a look into the tunnel where the gates move the taconite, they'll take us down into the tunnel and walk us through. If we want to go into ballast tanks, we go into the ballast tanks.
The experiences that we get in the program, the hands-on experiences, the scholarship opportunities, the networking, it makes you excited about your major. It makes you excited about getting out of school and getting into the industry, and that's huge.
Since 1896, the University of Wisconsin-Superior has had a significant relationship with the people and communities of northern Wisconsin. Whether it's citizens coming to our campus for a class or event, or UW-Superior students teaching, interning, or volunteering in the community, this Partnership for Progress is a shining example of the Wisconsin idea in action, located along the beautiful shores of Lake Superior. I'd like to extend a very special thank you to Brett Nottbaum, who's our lead faculty member in digital cinema, and Jacob Swanson, who was one of his students, former students, and Al Miller, who works in our public relations department, for all the work with our partners in putting that video together. So a special thank you to Brett and the group. One important means of partnership that you saw a hint of in the video is the creation of centers of research which work side by side with constituencies to help solve pressing economic and natural resource issues. And maybe put another way, we're harnessing the intellectual assets to solve real problems, whether it's tackling invasive species, assessing levels of mercury in fish, or converting ships to clean energy like liquid natural gas. Indeed, if you exclude Madison and Milwaukee, the university actually leads the comprehensive in the acquisition of federal research and grant dollars, to the tune of $3.5 million in 2011. At UW-Superior, these centers also provide tremendous opportunities for students to engage in the scientific method firsthand. We want them to get involved, get excited, and pursue investigative careers of their own. So what I've done is invited each of our centers to come and talk about their work so that you can hear firsthand from the talented and dedicated people who make these centers thrive. So the first is the Lake Superior Research Institute. Dr. Mary Balser is not only a product of our university, where she received her bachelor's degree, but she leads the Lake Superior Research Institute, which was created in 1967 and formally recognized by the Board of Regents in 1969. Dr. Mary Balser.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about our research center up here. As Dr. Wachter mentioned, this research center was originally formed as the Center for Lake Superior Environmental Studies back in 1967. I joined the university in 1973 as an undergraduate and was given the opportunity to work with the research scientist here and gain some very, very valuable experience that helped shape my career. The center was originally formed by a group of geologists, chemists, and biologists who were concerned about the Lake Superior region and wanted to do something to learn more about the local environment and what we could do to help the area. The scientists got going and did a lot of summer work on grants, hired students to work with them, and then as the amount of research dollars they got increased, they found out they had to hire more academic staff to continue the process year-round. The Lake Superior Research Institute currently employs 20 full-time research staff and employs 10 to 15 students on the projects throughout the year. We are not receiving any 102 money for support of our research institute. We rely entirely on soft money, and we have had a very successful record of this, and during the last 5 years we have averaged over $1.5 million in research grants to keep our work going. The mission of the Lake Superior Research Institute is three-pronged. We concentrate on environmental research, especially applied research that helps solve problems of the local area. We are very interested in continuing environmental education so that we can help produce scientists of the future. And we want to be involved in outreach. It's not enough just to publish our results in scientific journals. We want to make sure the information gets out to the user groups who will be able to take more of an ownership of the problems themselves. Some of our first work focused on the needs of the region, and if many of you have had a chance to tour the area, you will see that Lake Superior is located on an area of red clay soils, which are very easily erodible. And early agricultural projects and road development did not take this into account, and we had periods of very high erosion of red clay soils coming out into Lake Superior and starting to clog the gills of the fish and affect the other organisms that lived in the lake and near shore areas. The first studies were looking at what was the cause of the erosion, what were the effects of the sediments on living organisms, and what could we do to help stabilize the shorelines to prevent this. By working with the county and other landowners groups, we've been working very hard at helping revegetate the local areas and preventing erosion. Another thing that we are working on is trying to restore areas that have been contaminated in the past. The Hog Island Inlet was one of the first areas remediated by EPA, and we have been working as a team to help revegetate that area so that it can be used by wildlife again. Other projects have involved the effect of contaminated sediments and water on living organisms. Unfortunately, industry is very common in the Duluth-Superior area, and there are chances for chemicals to get into our water column, settle in the sediments, and become available to organisms to bioaccumulate. We originally formed as a group working with the Environmental Protection Agency in Duluth to try to determine what the effects of these chemicals might be on aquatic life. To do this, we bring water or sediment samples into the lab and conduct bioassays or toxicity tests. For these tests, we add organisms to the sediments or the water and watch to see if those chemicals affect the growth or reproduction of the animals. From our studies, we have found that many of the sediments in the Duluth-Superior Harbor and in Ashland Harbor are contaminated and will cause harm to living organisms, and then we have worked with the regulatory agencies to help remediate these areas and remove the sediments or cap them so they will not be available for exposure to the organisms anymore. We have also worked with the Environmental Protection Agency to test new chemicals that have been developed that will be used by industry and find out whether or not these chemicals will be toxic to aquatic life. From the results of our studies, we have published 3 manuals discussing the effects of various chemicals on aquatic life, and the results of this work are used internationally to help set standards of discharge of how much of the chemicals will be allowed into the environment. Chemicals not only hurt aquatic life, but they can bioaccumulate in organisms and become more concentrated in organisms that are at the top of the food chain. These chemicals can cause tumors in fish, can affect the reproduction of the fish, and may also impact humans. We have formed a partnership with the Native American tribes, and we work with the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission and the Grand Marais tribe to monitor the concentration of mercury in the fish that are a large portion of the diet of our Native American tribes. Every year we receive over 500 fish fillets that we have students help us grind up, extract the mercury, and determine the contamination levels. These results are disseminated to the tribes. They then put out notices of which lakes are clean and safe to eat fish from, which lakes may have a contamination problem, and which fish may have higher levels of the contaminate so that people may eat lower on the food chain, and by consuming panfish rather than walleye or lake trout, we may be limiting our impact, our exposure to the chemicals. Environmental monitoring has been a mainstay of the Lake Superior Research Institute for many years. By looking at the aquatic organisms that inhabit our areas, we are often able to see subtle changes in the environment before the problem becomes so large that it can impact humans. The Department of Natural Resources employs our scientists to monitor lakes and streams throughout the state of Wisconsin to look at the macroinvertebrates that might be giving some indication of runoff from farm fields, disturbance with increased sedimentation. The Environmental Protection Agency hired our lab from 2001 from 2006 to help conduct monitoring studies of all 5 Great Lakes. I had the honor of taking a team of students out on the EPA boat for the entire month of May and the entire month of August for 6 years to start learning about the water quality and the problems that might be affecting our Great Lakes. We have currently received funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative to continue monitoring 71 wetlands, streams, and marshes along the Wisconsin shoreline of Lake Superior to look at the effects of our land use on the water quality of our region. This is in partnership with the Wisconsin DNR, who will be using this data to help restore fish and wildlife communities in the region. Some of our monitoring efforts have discovered that because the Duluth-Superior area is a major port, we are receiving more visitors every year. Some of these visitors come in the form of aquatic invasive species. Most of you have probably heard horror stories about the zebra mussels and the harm that they can cause on aquatic ecosystems. While we were doing the monitoring projects from the EPA, we learned that the zebra mussels infestations in Lake Michigan and Huron are so great that they are depleting the algae population. The small plants are food for the small zooplankton, which in turn are food for the small fish, which are then fed upon by your lake trout and other game species. Because of the impact of the zebra mussels, the entire lower food chain has collapsed. There are very few algae, very few zooplankton, very few small fish, and fishermen on Lake Huron are complaining about the skinny quality of the lake trout that they are collecting. So monitoring and understanding the entire food chain is of great importance to the environment. The exotic species that we are finding coming to the Great Lakes are coming in ballast water. As vessels ply the Great Lakes transferring cargo back and forth, they are also bringing water from other parts of the U.S. and other parts of the world. And unfortunately, we are having small aquatic organisms stowing away in the ballast water of these ships. When the vessels dump their water in the Great Lakes, these organisms can also become established and start affecting our food chain and our environment. We have recently partnered with the Northeast Midwest Institute in Washington, D.C. as part of the Great Ships Initiative, which is designed to help solve the problems of transport of aquatic invasive species. We are working on a 3-prong approach here. When vendors come up with an idea of a treatment system that they think will be effective in controlling the spread of exotic species, that system needs to be tested. The U.S. Coast Guard is currently approving our facility as one of the only freshwater testing facilities in the world and the only one in the U.S. where we'll be able to test the effectiveness of these treatment systems. We work at a land-based system where first we test the equipment in the laboratory to find out whether or not the chemical treatment would be effective. Does it kill the organisms? Does it degrade? And most importantly, does it denature before we put it back out into the environment? If a test system passes this procedure, it will then move to our newly constructed land-based facility where we actually mimic bringing in water in very large amounts, running it through a scaled-up version of the treatment system, store it in our large tanks and take it on a 3-day voyage, and then discharge the water again to make sure the treatment system has effectively killed all of the organisms and is now safe to discharge. This year we'll be moving into shipboard testing. We'll be visiting ships that come into the Great Lakes and monitoring treatment systems that have been installed on the vessels to make sure that they are operating properly. So while research is one of the main missions of the Lake Superior Research Institute, education is another. We have been partners with the Superior School District for many years to try to get the schools interested in environmental education, and one of the first steps was to help train the teachers. Teachers were often uncomfortable teaching science topics, especially if they had not been exposed to them themselves, so we have run a series of teacher workshops where we train the teachers. The teachers then go back to their schools and help develop an environmental curriculum that can be given to the students. For many years, we have partnered bringing the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students out into our local lakes and rivers and out on Lake Superior aboard our research vessel, the L.L. Smith Jr., so they can see firsthand what scientists do and why it's important to take care of our water quality. We also offer educational programs for university students and try to employ those students so they get some hands-on research experience. Unfortunately, we are not going to be operating the research vessel this year as we are looking for additional sponsors to help fund the programs. We hope to keep this important program going in the future. Another area is not only to do the research, but to get the results out to the public. Our research findings are disseminated through workshops, through publications, and through working with the community. We have had a variety of programs working with community leaders to help them appreciate the fragile nature of the Lake Superior ecosystem. We are currently employing the Douglas County Invasive Species Coordinator, and she is working with lake owners and lake groups to let them know about the problems of invasive species. We are also encouraging citizens to be involved in monitoring their own lakes and streams and have set up an intensive method of citizen monitoring projects. We have been very, very fortunate over the years to have found our research space right on the campus of UW-Superior. This is a great advantage for all of us. The scientists are able to be actively involved with the students, to see them in the hallways between classes, to invite them into our laboratories, and to help instruct classes so we can spread the word to the students. It's also useful for the students to be able to spend an hour or two between class working in the lab along with the research scientist. We have done some remodeling during the past year. We were formerly housed in McCaskill Hall, which no longer exists, and we have now been relocated to Barstow Hall. The university has done a very good job on providing us space for our wet labs, where the students help culture the organisms that we use in our testing. We also have a newly designed taxonomy lab on the 3rd floor of Barstow Hall, where we have currently sat down to hire 5 to 10 students to work with us this summer in a variety of taxonomic projects. The basement laboratories have been retrofitted to help with the mercury analysis for the fish, and we are also doing some investigation into whether native plants can be used for production of biofuels and produce oils that will not freeze at our winter temperatures up here. We currently have enough research facilities to meet our need, but the hope is always to expand and to keep working with more students. We have found that our mission of educating leaders for the future has been very, very successful at UW-Superior and at the Lake Superior Research Institute. Of the 20 staff that we currently have employed, the names in red indicate that over 60% of our staff are former UWS graduates. Many have gone on to earn the master's and the doctorate degrees and have wanted to come back to the region to stay involved in helping solve environmental problems that face our area. If you would like to learn more about the Lake Superior Research Institute, we invite you to visit our webpage. Thank you very much for this opportunity to visit with you, and there will be room for questions at the end. Or would you care for one now?
Do you want to save questions till the end, or would you like questions now, Chancellor? I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
She said what at the end. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next centers are the Transportation and Logistics Research Center and the Great Lakes Maritime Research Institute. Led by Dr. Richard Stewart, the internationally recognized TLRC and GLMRI play vital roles in the economic well-being of the region. And I think if Bruce Hagan were here this morning as part of the Mayor's Superior Development team, he would testify that Dr. Stewart and his colleagues are often consulted when business development concerns involve the assessment of rail, ship, or trucking logistics. So without ado, Dr. Richard Stewart.
Members of the Board of Regents, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Superior. Successful programs at a university are a team effort, and I'm honored to be able to speak on behalf of all of those who've worked to make this a success. The world in the left-hand corner of the slide you see indicates that we view this as a global endeavor and never lose sight of that fact. I'm going to digress just a moment from my prepared remarks because of the opening remarks by the President of the Board about coming to Superior in the distance that they had to travel to do this. My family first settled in Wisconsin in 1830. We have been here ever since. In the 180 years we've helped Wisconsin grow, we, like many people, had a focus on what was south of 29 as being the heartland of Wisconsin. Now, having spent many years up here, I ask you to please make the most you can of this extremely valuable resource that you have in the northern part of the state as you look at this university. I've been asked to discuss 12 years of research. In the brief time I have available, all I can do is give you a flavor of what we've done. As our mission states, we are engaged in applied research, which means that we are working with academia, industry, government, and non-government agencies. We address the 5 modes of transportation, not only highway, air, and rail, and marine that the Chancellor mentioned, but also pipeline, because Superior, Wisconsin is the terminus of one of the largest pipelines in the United States and the only refinery that exists in the state of Wisconsin. Logistics and supply chain management has always been a core component of what we do. In an earlier slide, you saw a very enthusiastic Lindsay Paradise talk about being a major in the program and how much she enjoyed it. We find that a lot of people do not understand what logistics is and how pervasive it is in our current life and how critical it is to our civilization. And I have a little clip here that might give you a flavor and give you an idea why the students are so excited.
Logistics makes the world work better.
When it's planes in the sky for a chain of supply, that's logistics. When the parts for the line come precisely on time, that's logistics. A continuous link that is always in sync, that's logistics. Carbon footprint reduced, bottom line gets a boost, that's logistics. With new ways to compete, there'll be cheers on Wall Street, that's logistics. When technology knows right where everything goes, that's logistics. Bells will ring, 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 that's logistics. There will be no more stress, 'cause you call UPS, that's logistics.
At this time, we have ABF trucking on campus. They will be meeting with our students at lunchtime. Our transportation logistics student club is very active in bringing in guest speakers. And we're in a fortunate situation where we now have more people coming to hire our students than we have students available. I'm not complaining. We are expanding in the number of students, and part of the reason that they're coming to this university is, and we have about 30% international students, is because they are also actively involved in our research focus. As you can see from this slide, we've been successful in getting research funding from a variety of sources, but funding is only one measure of the success in research. A key component is partnerships, and I've listed a few of the partners on the lower right-hand side of your slide. One I want to bring your attention to is the University of Manitoba. We've been involved with Manitoba since the beginning. Why might you ask Manitoba? Well, the fact is that the Canadian border, which is the largest trading partner for the state of Wisconsin and the largest trading partner for the United States, is closer to us than Eau Claire is. Winnipeg is closer than Milwaukee. We have a much different perspective of the world than I did growing up in Whitewater. We are concerned with what moves across our borders from everywhere, and you'll see how this applies later on. These are a couple of the many studies we've done, and I'm only going to draw your attention to these cover sheets for a couple of reasons. The one on your left-hand side was a partnership done with a number of universities. And we tracked log truck movements in northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan, which are one of the valuable industries we have up here, to optimize them on roads that don't exist on any maps. Industry has now adopted this technology, and we recently presented a paper on this at a conference, in a national conference, and countries from South America are adopting the technology. On the right-hand side, we looked at how to improve transportation to reduce greenhouse effects, and this is now being used in biomass movement studies in the state of Michigan. Undergraduate research is a key component of what we do. We involve the students from the very beginning in the research process. The students not only help us in the research, but they publish and present papers, and I want to walk briefly through one of those just to give you a flavor of what they do. And this was not a solicited paper. It was actually an unfunded research project that we did pro bono when we saw the need. About 2005, Canada was opening Prince Rupert. They expected to have it online by about 2009. We started research in 2005 in this subject area because we knew it would impact Wisconsin tremendously. There's about 1,000 miles difference between a ship traveling from Shanghai to Prince Rupert and from Los Angeles to Shanghai. That's 2.5 days quicker delivery of cargo. And as you saw from the logistic clip, it's about movement. We and our students took a look at voyage movements on this area. We found that a ship moving from Shanghai to Prince Rupert versus going into Long Beach, LA, could carry 60,000 more containers in a year, a 34% increase in asset utilization. We then took a look at all the landside supply chain routes and found that we could deliver cargo coming through Prince Rupert to Minneapolis 100 hours quicker than coming through Long Beach, Chicago to Minneapolis. Then we looked at a hypothetical container terminal in the Twin Ports and shaved that by another 21 hours if we set up an intermodal terminal in the Twin Ports. We shared all this information, presented it at conferences in Canada and in the United States, and you now have an intermodal terminal with Canadian National in Chippewa Falls. Education and advisory services. One of our missions is to work with industry, and we do. We've trained incumbent workers, truck drivers. We make regional presentations and provide expert advice. We also author youth summer programs. We currently are on our third session this year of a youth summer program, worked in conjunction with Michigan Technological University, which has a rail program. And we will bring students from all over the United States to campuses at Michigan Tech and at UW-Superior. And all of the companies that you see listed at the bottom are sponsors and open up their doors to bringing these young people in to learn about the industry that they could potentially be in and move into one of our academic programs. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because, as you all know, Wisconsin is a maritime state. We're bordered on water on three sides. Navigable water. We're the 16th largest port in the United States that you're currently in. We ship tens of millions of tons of product worth billions of dollars. The vessel on the right-hand side of the slide is a ship that arrived in Superior a couple years ago to deliver salt from Amsterdam. We have some of the largest salt mines in the world here in the Great Lakes. They used this mode of transportation to help reduce price rises that were happening here. Transportation serves a variety of functions besides delivering the cargo. About 8 years ago, a colleague of mine at University of Minnesota Duluth and I were having a discussion about research, And we realized that for almost 25 years, research into maritime commerce in the Great Lakes had disappeared. And we decided to combine our two universities together and create a research institute to do maritime research in this very valuable mode of transportation. Our chancellors agreed, and this was a unique situation because we had two chancellors to sit down and provosts and agree that whatever money came in, we would share between states. We would share between the two universities, and we would share with other universities. We wanted to play well together in the sandbox. Created in 2004, we're a National Maritime Enhancement Institute, so dedicated by the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, which gives us access to special funding. We are looking at doing the improvement of both economically and environmentally of sustainable maritime commerce on the Great Lakes, and we'll talk about some of the work we've been doing. In your folder is an annual report, our 5th annual report, and you could find more information on our website. Our research is dedicated by a board of advisors that represents industry, government agencies, and non-governmental agencies. And they meet every year in September to work with us as well as hear presentations of research. We have 11 affiliate universities we work with that do combined research throughout the Great Lakes. A couple of them are Wisconsin universities, UW-GB, my old alma mater, and UW-Madison, as well as universities in most of the other Great Lakes states. We've had over $5 million in funding since 2005 from a wide variety of sources, both industry and governmental agencies. I'm going to talk briefly about one of those research projects, which was an EPA clean diesel grant. This clean diesel grant was completed ahead of schedule. We received $750,000, which we matched with $14.5 million from Great Lakes Fleet. That brought almost $15 million of business to Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, to repower the GOT the first time major engine repowering was done. It reduced the NOx, SOx, and emissions to comply with the ECA standards that we have to work with. These are huge engines. You could see one being lifted onto the ship in the lower right-hand corner. Just to give you a little perspective, they're the size of a small house. We involved not only our university, UMD, but also other universities who studied the engineering aspects of what was going on. Projects that we're currently working on, we're looking at a maritime transportation system gap analysis here in this port. Probably will transfer to Milwaukee. We've already discussed that with Milwaukee Coast Guard and other agencies. We're looking at the biota and ballast sediment, which is funded by industry, and we're going into the tanks of the Great Lakes ships and sampling the ballast and working with the great ships and LSRI and UMD to look at the samples of the ballast sediment. We're very excited about one of the projects that we have. We have a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Maritime Administration. We received $800,000 so far this year. We get up to $1 million a year for the next 5 years. And we are looking at the feasibility in this current funding period of using liquefied natural gas on U.S. Great Lakes ships. We held a seminar in Cleveland in February where we had over 150 people attend. And we brought in speakers from Norway and all over the Baltic region. Industry participated. Industry is co-funding this. We have picked the Badger as one of our pilot projects, ferry that operates between Manitowoc and Ludington. Why are we looking at LNG? The European community has been fueling ships with LNG now for over a decade very successfully. It virtually eliminates NOx and SOx. Particulate matter almost disappears. It far exceeds any EPA standards, and it's a cheap fuel. It burns clean, reduces engine maintenance. We are working not only on the engineering aspects of it, with University of Michigan School of Naval Architecture, but we are also looking at the supply chain of how do we create the liquefaction plants to supply the ships and the other modes of transportation with liquefied natural gas. We will be hosting a meeting this spring, early summer, about the feasibility of setting a liquefaction plant into the Superior Range, and I should say our second one, we already have one in Wrensham, Minnesota, to supply the mining industry, the rail industry who's done studies in this field, and the marine industry with liquefied natural gas. So we, like the students, are very excited about the future of our research. Thank you.
Formed in 2010, the Lake Superior National Estuarine Research Reserve is led by Dr. Ralph Garano, who also came on board at that time and directs the work of the reserve. Dr. Garano.
Good morning. I'd like to start off by thanking you all. Without the tremendous support of the university, this project wouldn't be here today. The project is about 1.5 years old. To date, we've brought in just over $2.5 million in money. We've brought in researchers from New Zealand, from other Great Lakes states, from across the country. And we're extending the reach of the university system internationally, and we're extending the research pieces and strengthening the research pieces that you've heard described already this morning. I'm new to the area. The program is new to the area, but the NOAA program, which is the National Estuarine Research Reserve, was formed in 1972 through an act of Congress. And as I describe this program to you this morning, you're going to see it's about partnerships, it's about leveraging money, and it's about return on investment. For every dollar that's spent at one of the 28 sites in the country, $2 are returned to the local community. First partnership I'd like to describe is between our federal partner, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the weather people. They've been portrayed to me as one of the least disliked federal agencies that we have to work with. The federal money comes into the university system through our state designated agency, which is University Extension, and there's a partnership between Extension and UWS here. Those together form the Lake Superior National Estuarine Research Reserve. We're about long-term research projects. So even though we're a little over 1.5 years old, we're starting to make plans to set up climate change studies that will last far into the future, and we're plugging into some of the national networks with the Weather Service and with other agencies, which I'll describe. You can tell the guy that didn't show up to the rehearsal yesterday. The reserve itself is part of the NOAA system. I'm going to show you a map that shows 28 reserves. Some of the reserves are 25 years old or more. We're the newest reserve in the system. Here at the university, we're considered to be a research institute here at UWS. And within the extension system, yes, we're a research center. So we wear multiple hats, which we use to our advantage when dealing with our partners. Here's a map that shows the current National Estuarine Research Reserve. As you notice, most of the sites are located on the ocean. We're one of 2 Great Lakes research reserves, which sets us apart from some of the other reserves in the country and gives the system a wider breadth of problems that we're tackling. The goals of our project are applied research and monitoring. So we actually have PhD level scientists on staff working with colleagues at other institutions. But we also have professional educators and outreach folks. The goal of the NEAR is to take research results and package them up for different sectors. So we have our education specialist that works with educators, K through 12 educators. We just received a grant, a federal grant, that is designed to enrich the curriculum for local educators. So we're getting the teachers out to experience the estuary and trying to get them to work materials into their curricula. We also have a professional outreach educator that works with decision makers. So within the NEAR program, we have people that deal with elected officials, city planners, to try to make sure they have the best available information when they make their decision. All of this fits under the stewardship umbrella. The estuary itself is very interesting here compared to some of the other estuaries. We have over about a 15-kilometer distance. We have one of the busiest ports in the world that we've just heard described. And we have some interesting wetland and aquatic ecosystem areas upriver on this very tight spatial gradient, which is very interesting to study. The reserve itself is made up of publicly held land down near the mouth of the estuary. And you can see some of the property owners are the university, Wisconsin DNR, City of Superior owns some property. The red star on the map here is our center, which is actually part of the UWS campus, was recently added through a building purchase, which I'll describe in a few moments. The point of the reserve, though, is that we have all of these cooperating landowners that have united under a common management plan, and we have the ability to set up these long-term research projects. This busy slide here shows you that we've created some jobs in the area. The darker boxes are positions that are currently filled. So we have currently 11 staff and students on board in the last year and a half. And when we're all fleshed out, we should have between 18 and 20 people on staff. This is, staff is made up of core positions as well as students. And there are NOAA graduate fellows that come through every year that are funded by NOAA money. So we bring graduate students to this area to work with our students on campus and with other researchers in the area. The campus, the Lake Superior NEAR campus, is part of UWS campus, and it's on Barker's Island. We'll be hosting a tour tomorrow morning. There are two buildings that have been purchased. One was a former boathouse restaurant, and one was the Vista House. And the plans for these buildings include our administrative offices, and we'll actually have a dockside laboratory set up. The second building will be a publicly accessible science and interpretive center. And then we also plan on designing in some classroom space and resource center so that the community can use the space, as well as visiting educators and visiting scientists. So it's a community resource. I'll wrap up with this last slide. My first year that I spent here was trying to let people know that there was such a thing as the Lake Superior National Estuarine Research Reserve. I think we got that message out. Finally, people recognize that we're here. Now I'm trying to explain to people that we're not just about aquatic science. We have a wide range of study topics that we're looking at. We're working with social scientists. We've had social scientists come in from Madison and from Ann Arbor to meet with our staff and the staff of the EPA across the river, and we're trying to set up some long-term social science experiments. We're working with historians. We're working to set up an artist in residence program where we actually have artists come in, work side by side with the scientists, and try to interpret the science through different media. We're working on economic studies and chemistry studies. So we're a lot more than just aquatic sciences, and we're trying to add that to the community here and try to make connections between disciplines. So that's my last slide. I'd like to invite the Chancellor back up, and I guess we'll be taking questions.
So I want to just close this segment and turn it over and say that you can see the connection of our region and resources provide critical solutions to very real problems and educational opportunities for its citizens. So we would like to open it up for any questions that you might have to anybody on the panel.
I'd like to make one comment before you start, which is to thank you very much for all of your presentations. They were really very, very good, to the point, substantive, enhancing our knowledge of important topics. And I thank you very much for that. How about if I ask to see if there are any questions from the Regents first that they want to direct you? David.
The assistance you've provided is very interesting, especially that comparison from the other port. But where are we in the history of the volume of shipping on the lake? Historically, now, what you think is in the future, and what are the pluses and minuses that will change that?
How many hours do I have, Chancellor? Yeah, okay. Shipping evolves, and we have followed for 5 years very closely and worked with the Baltic region of the European community because the Baltic Sea is about 30% larger than the Great Lakes but has 20% less water. They deal with many of the same issues that we deal with, ice, invasive species. They hate the yellow perch, which we brought to their shores. They find it a devastating creature. And the reason I mention this, because we look at the ferry systems, we look at how they use natural gas, how they have grown their maritime industry into new markets and new supply chains. 2 factors are going to greatly impact shipping on the Great Lakes. One is the rise of energy costs. I don't have a clear crystal ball. Mine is a little cloudy. But I can tell you that I expect that diesel fuel costs will continue to rise as demand in China and India and other countries increase. And as diesel fuel starts to hit $6, $7, $8, $10 a gallon, which is what you see in Europe, marine transportation becomes extraordinarily attractive. One of the reasons that marine transportation has not taken off in the Great Lakes is because of this thing that the President mentioned called winter, and the fact that the lakes on occasion freeze over. What we're seeing happen, and we could have a separate discussion about what causes climate change, and it's been very carefully tracked, is that ice is leaving the lakes much earlier and coming in much later. Ships could have operated year-round this year. If we reach the stage, which may happen within a few decades, of year-round operation on the Great Lakes, you will then see supply chains drastically alter what they do. If that's combined with increased energy costs, then you will see a natural modal shift which takes place to the marine field. Having said that, all modes of transportation in the United States are intermodal. And part of what we look at is how do you link rail to marine and truck to marine. And we've looked at what they do in the European community of moving oversized, overweight cargo on high-density corridors to the marine field, such as the paper industry, and then off to another area. So we're trying to stay 5 and 10 years ahead of the power curve.
Anybody else? Tim. Tim, would you be sure to get close to the microphone?
This is dangerous to be putting close to a microphone. Regarding the estuary project, can you explain, the definition of an estuary is where essentially saltwater meets freshwater. And so here we have a freshwater meeting freshwater. How do the 2 locations that are involved in the estuary study qualify to be involved?
Through an act of Congress. Actually, what we have here is a freshwater estuary, which shares a lot of similarities with a real estuary. And so this is something that my staff and I are going around and around about right now. So we're trying to actually make this one of the central themes of our educational program: is what is a freshwater estuary and how does that differ with a more conventional estuary. But you're right. Estuary is where the river meets the sea. We're considering Lake Superior to be a sea, an inland sea. So there are a lot.
What does that mean? What are you going to study?
Oh, there are. What's interesting about our study is that the land use...
You have to be at the mic.
I have to be at the mic. What's interesting about the system is that the water that comes down from the watershed is very stained. It has a lot of organic carbon in it, a lot of nutrients in it, and it comes into the lake, which is nutrient poor, very clear water. So you have this gradient, river to lake gradient. That's what makes it very interesting. So it shares that river to lake gradient with a coastal estuary. We're just trying to figure out how our estuary here differs from the other freshwater estuary in Lake Erie. One of the things that we're learning is that we have this metal corrosion problem affecting our ports. That's something that was really picked up on in the late 90s by folks here in Superior. That's unique to Lake Superior ports, and it happens at rates and to the degree of corrosion that is occurring in coastal systems and marine coastal systems. But it doesn't affect any of the other Great Lakes. So that's something that we're starting to focus our attention on right now. Yep.
Judy.
I have a comment. I really appreciated this presentation because it focused on what makes this university distinct in our state. And I think that it's very important for us to have that understanding, that this is a very unique place. I've been here on this campus several times in the last 7 years, and I'm very glad you made that focus on how impressive that was. And I love the slide in which you showed how many were graduates of this university. I thought that was great.
Anybody else? Mark.
Well, I would just make a comment. Whether you know you did it or not, I think what we just heard were the first presentations to the Committee of the Whole of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee. The Board of Regents created that committee, and one of the purposes for that committee is to highlight for state decision makers what important roles are being fulfilled by each one of our campuses to take the work that is going on in the campuses, in the classrooms, and educating students, and directly applying that for solutions that challenge our communities, our businesses. If we just had these 3 presentations on a thumb drive and were able to show that all around the state when anybody questions about whether we are part of the problem or we are an essential part of the solution, we could just show all 3 of you. So thank you very much.
Mr. Tyler.
I just wanted to comment, the synergy between the research projects is really interesting. I had the pleasure of spending a little time with each of you earlier, and some of the things that I really didn't understand that when you look at climate change and what impacts that might have, we've talked a lot about winter, where an invasive species may come into a harbor and winter may kill it off. And as climate change occurs and the temperatures rise, invasive species no longer get killed off. How do we know that unless we're watching? And I think that it's hard to understand how impactful your research is on what our future is going to look like. And I think the intersection of the 3 areas that you've demonstrated or shown today, I think, is really important, and I just really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for it.
Ed.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I graduated from UW-Superior, and I echo what my fellow regents have said. This is a great presentation showing the relationship between this campus and the economic situation in this area and how vital it is. There are also other good parts to this campus, and if you stick around and look hard enough, you'll find it. I'm very proud to be associated with this and have graduated from the school, and want to thank you for all the good work you've done. Thanks.
we'll have one more question before we stop, and I'm going to get to ask it. I'd like to ask, especially Dr. Balser, whether there are any collaborations between and among what you do with Superior and Stevens Point, UW-Madison, UW-Milwaukee School of Freshwater Science, that would be helpful for us to understand as system leaders.
This is one of the things we would like to be working on. Milwaukee, with their School for Freshwater Studies, is trying to expand areas, and we had a conference call a few weeks ago with representatives from most of the UW schools trying to look at ways that we can funnel graduates from our schools into their graduate programs and combine more that way, and also to start sharing resources for research projects. So it's something that will be growing in the future, we hope, is that a way that the undergraduate institutions can partner with the master's and doctorate graduate institutions to keep funneling students through the chain and to combining the research activities. So far, we have not had as much interaction as we would like, and this is something that we're hoping to grow. Some of the talk has been about how students from one campus could come to other campuses to join in research projects there. We have in the past sponsored students from Madison who have done their toxicity studies on our campus while they were doing coursework on Madison. With Point, we have sent many of our students there to do graduate work, and then they have come back to us after that. So cooperation is something we'd like to continue to do.
Thank you very much. All right. Thank you again, and we will turn to the next item on our agenda. That next item for this morning pertains to the state's 2013-15 biennial budget. While that may still seem like a far-off challenge, it's something that we must begin preparing for now. Last month, Senior Vice President Michael Morgan presented a brief overview of discussions and decisions this board must undertake over the next several months pertaining to both the 2012 annual budget and the 2013-15 biennial budget. Today's presentation pertains only to the next biennium, and I emphasize it is for information only. As the title implies, the session is about priorities. This is a chance for all regions to begin the conversation about budget priorities. We will be sure to allow ample time for questions and discussion. And I know Kevin has some preliminary comments.
Thank you, Regent Spector. As Mike said, today's discussion builds on last month's presentation, if you recall, about the budget process. Going back a bit further, you may also remember that we did a very data-rich presentation in February on cost containment, followed by our deep dive discussion in March about financial aid and student debt. So you really have had a series, and will continue to, of major presentations related to budget matters in one way or another. And that set, including today's discussion, I think will be very helpful as we look ahead. That is, I hope today's discussion will lay the groundwork for more detailed budget discussions that we will have in June, at your June meeting, and at the August meeting, where you will be asked to act on the UW system's official request for the next state budget. This process may seem a bit protracted, perhaps is, but we want to take a deliberative, strategic approach, one that gives board members time to understand the complex issues, ask questions now, formulate questions perhaps for later, and offer suggestions along the way about how things are shaping up. I think this will ensure that our June presentation, where we will present some more concrete ideas for your consideration, will reflect the board's shaping priorities as we go along. Before the budget is fully formed, we want to be sure that it is fully informed by your discussions. So there are many moving parts to the UW system's biennial budget, and all those pieces are interconnected in one way or another. That is, decisions about one item or one line item may well have ripple effects elsewhere. Ultimately, all of the parts need to move in sync to help our UW institutions achieve their mission. What resources will we need to sustain what we're doing today? What innovations will help us do those things better or more efficiently? Are there unmet needs that merit our response? In addition to funds, what new flexibilities do we need in the years to come? That last question is an important one. It's a reminder that our biennial budget request also addresses statutory language changes. We appreciate the significant new flexibility that UW institutions received in the 2011-13 biennial budget, and our next biennial budget will reflect some of those changes, including block grant flexibility in the way that UW campuses prioritize their use of GPR dollars. The work of Regent Falbo's legislative task force will address some of these issues, as you'll hear tomorrow, and we may well want to incorporate some of those additional changes in the materials we submit to the state in September. So Senior Vice President Morgan will take over here and will review with us a little bit more about the process and then engage this board in a conversation about opportunities and threats and priorities. Senior Vice President Morgan.
Thank you, President Riley. Good morning, Board of Regents. This is an important topic, but never has an introduction so effectively cleared a room. As President Riley mentioned, our March Board of Regents, our meeting featured a review of the timeline for budget discussion, which we hope will culminate in August with a board action on a proposal that we'll forward over to the Department of Administration and the Governor in August, so September of this year. Today, we move to the next step in the timeline, and a conversation hopefully will be had with all the regions about what our funding priorities and strategic direction should be in that 2013-15 biennium budget. Over the next month or so, we'll also have an opportunity, aside from discussions that we'll have in the board environment here, we'll have opportunities to brief regents individually about the 13-15 budget. The June meeting, which will be our next meeting after today, will afford us an opportunity to once again engage and discuss the 13-15 budget request at a high level, using input that we received from you today to help move us closer to a proposal which, as I indicated before, that we'll get over to the Governor and DOA in September. The process hopefully will culminate in June 2013 with a passage of a biennial budget. We will begin our discussion today by reviewing the UW strategic framework for the last several years, the growth agenda for Wisconsin. We'll explore questions like why the growth agenda goals remain relevant and vital to the entire state, and why the state resources provided to UW system are a sound investment, not merely an expenditure. As an aside, I think we've already heard very compelling arguments from UW-Superior why the state's investment is a good one. As we work through this presentation on the growth agenda, we'll discuss the challenges of balancing educational quality and ensuring that we have a broad and affordable access for Wisconsin citizens into our university system. At the same time, we must also keep in mind that what the state demands of us in terms of performance. So we need to be mindful of what kinds of returns on investment the state demand for the investment that they make in the UW system. For those of you who are new to the Board of Regents, I'll talk just a little bit more in detail about the growth agenda for your benefit. The growth agenda, as I indicated, is a focal point of the work of our colleges, universities, and extension networks, reflecting both the historic mission of our public institutions, but focusing that work more intensely on Wisconsin's contemporary needs, what the citizens of Wisconsin demand and deserve from their public university system. The growth agenda is focused on three core needs: the need for more well-prepared college graduates in Wisconsin, the need for well-paying jobs that support a high quality of life for our citizens, and the need for stronger communities where citizens and businesses alike can thrive. I will briefly talk about each of these areas of the growth agenda. Let's start by talking a little bit about more graduates. From a global standpoint, I think we'll all agree that it's easy to see that the United States needs more well-prepared college graduates to move and grow the economy and to compete in a globally, increasingly competitive global economy. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the United States is now 9th in the world with 41% of young adults, those 25 to 34 years of age, in the number of adults with 4-year degrees in our population. 26%, well, 40% of our young adults between the ages of 25 and 34 have an Associate of Arts or higher degree in the U.S. population. 10 years ago, in this area, the United States was 3rd. Wisconsin is below the national average. We ranked 29th in 2009 in the number of adults with 4-year degrees in our state population. 26% of adults in Wisconsin have a 4-year degree. The national average is 28%, so as you can see, we're 2 percentage points behind. And we're well behind our neighbor, which we're often compared to, Minnesota, which is at 32%. We know from other studies that the majority of new jobs in Wisconsin will require some type of post-secondary credential in the future. With that in mind, we believe that the growth agenda should be a powerful tool in helping Wisconsin to be competitive to the future. As it relates to more graduates, we're not trying to close the gap all at once, and we're not imposing a one-size-fits-all solution. Rather, we're taking a bottom-up approach. In each UW institution, chancellors with their staffs are allowed to determine what they can reasonably achieve with increased efficiency, improved graduation rates, better retention, high-impact academic programs, and increased enrollment in helping us to reach our more graduates objective. Whichever strategy and tactics they choose, based on the unique characteristics of their institution, they share a common aim, conferring a larger number of degrees that will give Wisconsin a competitive advantage to the future. And between 2000 and 2012, enrollment in our system has increased by 22,000 students. UW institutions have driven themselves to bring more students from a broader range of backgrounds into higher education. We're enrolling more non-traditional age students, more students of color, more first-generation students, and more military veterans. Over that same time frame, our 6-year graduation rates have increased by 2.4%. So while we're taking a broader and deeper cut of students into our system, we're graduating at an increasingly higher rate over a 6-year period. Our colleges and universities have increased the numbers of degrees awarded from about 27,000 in 2000 to over 34,000 by 2010, an increase of about 7,500 degrees or 28%. We have specifically increased efforts in areas like education, engineering, health sciences, STEM areas to fulfill a specific need in the Wisconsin economy. We're making good progress with our More Graduates plan, but we see threats and challenges ahead to our ability to meet the state's future needs and to achieve our goals. As we look ahead, we must ask ourselves, how many students can we support without new state support before quality is impacted? As we take a wider and deeper cut, how do we find resources to support students who may be somewhat less prepared for post-secondary education? The higher tuition rates paid by non-resident students have strengthen the university's ability to support more resident students. Each non-resident students, by the way, support about 2 resident students. But our first obligation is to Wisconsin taxpayers. What should the non-resident and resident mix look like at our institutions? Should we look at that ratio on a system-wide basis or on a campus-by-campus basis, which is the way that we look at it right now? We allow 25% of our campus enrollments to be from non-residents. Building great access for non-traditional students requires new infrastructure and continuous development. How do we balance the investment we make in our traditional student population with new investments in the non-traditional market that is already being served by for-profits and not-for-profits? Those are the questions that we have before us. Those are the questions that we need input into as we proceed in formulating our 2013-15 budget. So I'll pause here for a moment to see if there's any input from the Board of Regents.
Mike Double.
I'm curious on Michael, on one statistic, the graduation rate up 2.4 percentage points.
Yes.
I'm wondering what the base of that is. Is that 2.4 percentage points of all students, or is it 2.4% more graduates? So I don't know if the increase in students is reflective, if the increase in graduates is better or worse, depending on what the base is.
It's over a 2-point increase in the percentage of graduates over a 6-year period. So no matter what the base, the fact of the matter is we're graduating a higher percentage of our students over that 6-year period by about 2%, over 2.5%.
Okay, but with the growth rate in the number of students in total, I'm not sure if that's 2.4 is up or down.
I don't know if I'm understanding.
Yeah, if it's 2.4, if we graduate 100,000 students a year and it's now 102,400, is that percentage of total students up or down that graduate? We don't have to go into it further.
Well,
I mean, I'm just curious.
I think Rick would like to get in on this debate.
I can quickly help with that. Because of the overall enrollment.
There are 2 things. I'll give the campus as an example, but it's generally true system-wide. The graduation rate on average has gone up, 2.4%, but the enrollment's also gone up. So you'll be Oshkosh, to your question, Mike, we've had over, I think it's about a 7 or 8 year period, a 23% increase in the number of degrees awarded. And so we went from 1,700 degrees awarded to 2,100 degrees awarded.
But is that a higher percentage of your student population?
Slightly, yeah.
Yes.
But the increase, to answer your question, Mark, the increase in the graduation rate was a, let's say, minor contributor to the total increase in the number of degrees awarded. The increase in the enrollment, we went up 2,000 students. Does that help, Mike?
Yeah.
I don't know what it is system-wide, but...
Regent Falbo, are you okay with Regent Crane?
I want to comment on the more graduates priority, which is very important, I think, and something in which this board has believed strongly for some time. I want to emphasize that in my understanding of that, primarily that's more resident graduates. I think that is the important statement. I value the non-resident students who are a part of our educational institutions. I think that not only has that been a revenue issue and source, but also I think that that adds important dimensions to our universities. But the priority for us has to do better in educating Wisconsin students, and I just want to put that up. That's what I think that means mostly.
To be sure, the majority of our graduates throughout the system are residents of Wisconsin. There are several universities within the system that have a higher non-resident population, like Madison, for example. Platteville has a slightly higher, and there are some others. But for the most part, our university system, the students who are in those universities are residents of the state of Wisconsin.
Commitment that the state has to make, that is what we're talking about, more of our citizens who become better educated.
Right. I think what you'll find also, to your point, not only are we graduating more residents of the state of Wisconsin, but those non-residents who come into the state, not an insignificant number of them, percentage of them actually stay here. So we are importing individuals who come here for education. They stay here for a career. So I think that enriches the environment here in Wisconsin
I do too,
also.
Michael.
Yes.
Call him Bradley. Call him Regent Bradley.
Mike, I think these are all the kinds of questions that we as a board have to ask. If we controlled our revenue sources and we knew the number we were working with, then as a board, we could fulfill our statutory duty. We could ask and we could answer these questions. But to use the investment metaphor again, there's a group of people who decide on the state portion of the investment, and in many ways also decide or greatly influence our ability to raise funds through tuition, which is the other source of funds to do these kinds of things. So in asking these questions, can you describe for us where does how do the conversations take place to whoever's sitting in the governor's office, to whoever are leaders of the budgetary committees, the Department of Administration, in saying, we're asking these questions, which is our statutory duty to ask, but you're an essential part. So what are you looking for? What would you like us to accomplish in terms of state goals? And blend in the questions or the answer to that question with what we have a responsibility to do in carving out a path. How does that work? Is it working? Could it work better?
Well, let me just say this. We have at least a two-prong approach to trying to understand what should be in our, let's say, our 13-15 biennial budget, because we're talking about it here today. One is to understand from you what your sense of priorities are, based on your experiences moving around the state, talking to state leaders, your contacts sometimes within the administration, the governor's office, in the legislature. What are you hearing, right? We also do a look back to ensure that, the things that we've done in the past are still those things that we want to pull forward based on all of those sets of experiences, sort of infusing the conversation with most current thinking, right? Our job, I think, is to get to the administration, sit down and talk with legislative leaders, and try to understand what their priorities are. And the blending or the bringing together of those two sets of data should give rise to what would be in our budget. There's one other group, I think, that we need to talk to also as we work through more graduates, and we'll talk about more jobs. We need to talk to industry leaders. We need to ask them, what are those things that you need from a big university system like ours, a diverse university system? We're a big system, but we are a system of distinctive universities who have strengths based on their evolution and growth over the years. How can we add, right, to and make better the Wisconsin economy? That's one of the questions that we should ask as part of the, our tradition of the Wisconsin idea. So it seemed to me that there are a number of conversations that we need to have that are necessary in trying to come to some agreement on what will be our 13-15 budget. It can't. I think the question that you're asking is a good one, and hopefully I've responded to what you've asked. But it's a complex. Actually, it's not that complex. It's a pretty straightforward set of considerations that almost informs a process that we have to undertake in reaching some decisions about how we're going to put together our budget. It can't be, let's talk about it in the boardroom here and then go forward on what we believe is needed in the world. That's one way to get at it, but you're likely to be greeted with a not so enthusiastic response unless we understand what it is that the government and leaders in the legislature want from the university system.
Mike, I think Kevin wants to add to your comments.
To your question, Regent Bradley, I think we have an advantage in going through the process that Michael just described this year in a way, because for the first time ever in the current Budget Act for this biennium, we have 40-plus performance indicators that the state has said to us, we're interested in your doing these things, and we want you to report on how well you're doing on each of these things. And many of those things tie directly back to our activities on those questions. How well are you doing with retention of students? How well are you doing with graduation of students? How well are your efforts to create new jobs and sustain the jobs we have in Wisconsin going? And again, the presentation earlier this morning fits right in as one of the many answers we can give to those kinds of performance indicators. There are also items on that list like how well are you doing in retaining quality faculty, who are the people along with the staff who deliver on all those activities on the ground. So the advantage is I don't think we need to wonder as much like we used to, well, what does the legislature really want? What does the administration really want? We've got a very specific list of things that we know are important to them. So I think a central piece of forming this budget up now for the next biennium has to be those performance indicators and how we're going to address those to meet the answers to these kinds of questions. So we really do, I think, for the first time ever, have a less complex process in that consultation and back and forth with state government, one that's more targeted, focused on what they've told us they want us to do.
Aside from what I've already talked about, is in a political environment, things change, right? So Act 32 gives us a fairly clear set of performance measures. I think it's incumbent upon us to always be in contact with leadership to understand, are those still your priorities? Are those still the things that are important to you? And then ask, how do we fulfill those?
Regent Smith is next, and then we will continue on.
Mike, just looking at that slide and the mention of non-traditional students, could I ask you a question? Because when we have accountability reports, and we've talked a lot about how our system, as sometimes compared to other higher educational systems, is addressing the needs of non-traditional students. And I think that's something we have to really, in my view, focus a lot on, given our workforce, the world we live in. What are we doing, and maybe somebody else could ask, as far as that non-traditional student, as far as better serving them?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit later in the presentation about some of the things that are being done by our universities in the system, and some of them are very innovative. And there are some ideas, quite frankly, that are being discussed internally right now that at some point, hopefully, we'll have an opportunity, once we reach agreement on the direction that we're going to be going, that we'll be able to bring back to the Board of Regents. But I think rather than me answering this question, I will defer to our chancellors who are doing some innovative things to reach out to the non-traditional students. I'll give you an example right offhand. UW-River Falls and their Hudson Center that was designed to reach out to and attract and make for a clear portal for non-traditional students to get back and finish up their degrees up in that area of the country. And we have Chancellor Sorensen, who has some ideas on that.
Yeah, thank you. We, back in 1999, began to look at customized instruction costs for non-traditional students to take programs with the internet or hybrid, face-to-face and internet. Troy is one of our good examples of a person who is our graduate now and has been on campus one time, Troy, maybe, or the first time of graduation in May. But we now have 1,600 students statewide in 20 programs, clustered in about 3 or 4, and we charge market rates for those programs so that they're self-sustaining. We don't use state dollars. We plow the money back into the enterprise for program development, to hire faculty and staff, to hire service for those students. And it's grown from 50 students in 1999 to 1,600 today. And we plan to grow that as the market allows us to. But that's one good example of how we have reached out to non-trads and they've responded in a very positive way.
Mike, if I may, I wonder if Troy would like to say anything at this point.
UW-Stout has done an excellent job in reaching non-traditionals as well as River Falls. The one thing that I've found is in seeking out my degree is UW system in general maybe didn't do as good of a job in marketing to the non-traditional. You've got your for-profit institutions, they're marketing, like crazy to adult students, and those schools are full of people. My first thought looking at this slide is, wouldn't we really have to answer question 1 before we answer the question 2 and 3? I think of the non-traditionals, and if we can handle an increase in enrollment and maintain quality, why wouldn't we want to go after that segment? And if we can handle that, then I would encourage to look at more aggressive marketing to that segment.
Comments. Hands are up. Chancellor Shields, let's start with you, and I'll come back to Mike, who wants to comment too.
Just very quickly, UW-Platteville has 2 collaborative engineering programs in the Fox Valley and Rock County, and we're investigating the opportunity to expand into Washington counties. And this is getting engineers that we need in communities that are at a distance from our campus, but where they're desperately needed.
Mike, why don't you go ahead, and then I want to go back to Tony, who is maybe I don't know if it's on this topic, Tony, or a different topic. Okay, Mike.
I'd like to go back to what Kevin was saying about the measurements and the clarity of that from our public officials. And I'm wondering if, on a macro basis, we shouldn't reevaluate our goals. Not taking those 40 measurements and saying that's what we want to do, but maybe there are some measurements in there that are more specific or a subset of goals to help us get to the macro goals, such as non-traditional students. I mean, the growth agenda, a long-term goal, I've never had a long-term goal that wasn't changed during the term of that goal. And I'm wondering, based on those things, if we should look at the goal again and see if there's more, if it could be more specific, if it could incorporate what you and the chancellors and the Board of Regents feel are maybe tenets of this goal that are more measurable and they can achieve what we want to achieve. I'd like to see what you think on that.
I think it's a good idea, and I think we will doing that. We have, in effect, already begun that process, working with the chancellors about what their goals are in that regard, working through Heather Kim's office, our Associate Vice President for Institutional Research, working with the institutions as we try to form up how we ought to respond to these new indicators. So how responding to them will reshape numerical goals as part of the conversation underway.
Mike, I'd like to turn to Tony and then Tim, who I know wants to say something before too.
Regent, I certainly appreciate the presentation and the work that we're going to have going forward, but I'll ask the question today, and I'm sure it's somewhat unanswerable, but I'll continue to answer it because I'll need this kind of framed in my mind going forward, is how we can possibly increase graduates and decrease state support. How can that happen? And I will continue to ask that question, and hopefully at some point in time we will either figure out how that is realistically done, or we may need to re-examine our goal.
Well, the bottom line is that at some point we won't be able to get it done, and to combine what Troy was talking about in terms of quality, and I think what it is that you're getting at, Tony, at some point, we have to ask ourselves, if we don't receive the kind of investment that we need from the state, how do we maintain quality in our system? How do we ensure that we have the right kind of labs with the right equipment? The faculty, we have strong faculty in those labs, in those lecture halls, doing that work, all the necessary work to ensure that we have a well-qualified graduate. That's the struggle. That's the tension that we have to work through. And I think part of our getting to a place where hopefully we will see more state investment is by our being able to formulate the compelling argument that what we're doing really will get at those performance goals that the state has laid out for itself. And therefore that return will be there so long as we get the investment that we need in the system for our universities to produce the high quality of graduate that the state needs.
Tim.
Back in the olden days, I was a graduate student of educational administration at Madison, and one of my professors was Robert Clodius, who was vice president of the university and went on to greater things in Washington, much like Chancellor Ward has done. And the first book he assigned us was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which was a very interesting book, and it's about quality. I think basically what you take away from that is that quality is in the eye of the beholder, and it wasn't a really good definition for answering a question like how do you maintain quality. I think that the quality movement in industry probably provides a better definition. It's very simple. It's quality is what the customer wants. And so in answering the question, and this is where I think we struggle, we have to decide who our customer is and answer it from the point of view of the customer. And so the quality, maintaining quality can be different depending on who you're talking about is measuring quality and who you're trying to produce a quality graduate for. And so I think that it's useful to have that kind of a discussion in order to give Michael and President Riley and the rest of our administration some idea of what are we trying to maintain, or what are we trying not to have fall off in a time of tough tax times and disinvestment. So great question, and I don't think anybody. I'll be happy to hear what anybody has to say about that answer.
Judy.
Just listening to the last comments, and I heard it especially in what you just said, Tim, the word that leapt out to me was maintain. And in fact, in order to meet the needs of the customers or the state or whatever, I think we're going to have to improve quality. I think that that's a constant need, and that we're not just talking about maintaining whatever we think we've had and that we've been proud of, but the times are going to demand more. And so the question is even more relevant to me as to how are we going to do that and adequately provide the resources for it. I don't know the answer to that either, and I think that is basic.
Michael, would you like to move on or take more questions?
Let's move on. We could be here for a while, I think, when we get into, especially the quality question. Let's get to the second piece of the growth agenda, more jobs. As I mentioned, the second core component of the growth agenda is more jobs. It's important to remember that these are goals that are not mutually exclusive. They are interdependent. If we only focus on producing more college graduates, but there are no jobs in Wisconsin, those newly educated citizens, of course, won't find themselves in a very happy place. Conversely, if we only focus on growing businesses and industries while ignoring the future workforce needs of those businesses, these smart CEOs might leave Wisconsin for greener pastures where human talent is more readily available. That said, the second goal is different. Whereas we have more direct control over the number of students we admit and the degrees we confer, our role in the job creation arena is often more indirect. In this area of the growth agenda, we play the role of partner and catalyst. We collaborate with state businesses and economic development agencies in an effort to develop a healthy economic ecosystem where innovation and entrepreneurism intersects with intellectual curiosity and demonstrated research expertise. However, we must also recognize that the university can also be a direct source of new business and new jobs in the form of technology transfer and spin-off businesses that emerge directly from UW research. The university is uniquely positioned to serve Wisconsin in this area. Unlike other entities that can promote either workforce development or economic growth, the university is critical to doing both, preparing the workforce through education and fostering job creation, and preparing the workforce and fostering job creation, two-pronged. Let's talk about a few of the examples of how our universities are doing this. And once again, I'll invite, with the permission of the board chair, the board president, I'll invite our chancellors to comment where appropriate here. I'm going to use examples that, quite frankly, I've received from them. A couple of years ago, the Wisconsin Technology Council determined that academic research and development, academic R&D, is a little over $1 billion industry in Wisconsin, which translates into over 38,000 direct and indirect jobs. So just academic research alone has a huge impact on the number of jobs and economic activity in Wisconsin. A March 2011 report for UW-Madison that was done by North Star Economics found that the campus had a total economic impact of $12.4 billion. By the way, we took a look back and we saw a 2000 report that showed that the entire UW system back in the year 1998 to 2000 had about a $10 billion impact. Now Madison alone has a $12 billion impact, and that's not aggregating the impact that our other universities have. These efforts are no way limited to UW-Madison. As I indicated, the Wisconsin Institute for Sustainable Technology at UW-Stevens Point, Bernie Patterson and his group, is developing a pilot biorefinery that will produce both biofuels from renewable sources such as wood paste and switchgrass and other bioproducts that will replace petroleum-derived chemicals. Since 1994, units within UW-Stout's Discovery Center have completed over 5,000 technical assistance activity with over 2,700 companies. These are questions that came to the university from area businesses asking questions that presumably will help them to compete more effectively in the marketplace. And UW-Stout has responded. These activities in product development, workforce optimization, technology development, strategic planning, and quality improvement have resulted in client-reported impacts of over $500 million. The Whitewater University Technology Park is a business incubator for entrepreneurs and high-tech startup companies. The first building, the Innovation Center, opened in 2011 and is nearly 70% occupied. This initiative will create and foster durable businesses and jobs through a close alignment of UW-Whitewater's research and educational competencies. Institutions have also formed research partnership with industry. For example, Johnson Controls has partnered with UW-Milwaukee and UW-Madison on 3 energy storage research laboratories aimed at speeding commercial development of the next generation of battery technology. Whoever wins that race to the marketplace, that is a battery that keeps the charge longer, will definitely have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And we're working with Johnson Controls, hopefully, in a way that will enable them to yield a competitive advantage in this area. The WISES Technology Foundation, which you will hear more about tomorrow during the READY committee meeting, works hand in hand with comprehensive universities to support research and technology development, link campus innovation with industry leaders, and speed technology transfer through patent and licensing opportunities. Our statewide network of small business development centers, led by UW Extension, provides educational assistance to strengthen small businesses. In 2011, in fact, the SBDC network facilitated 230 business startups, held 397 training events attended by 7,100 business leaders, and helped 120 entrepreneurs create businesses in the state of Wisconsin. It seems to me that we're reaching our goal of having an impact on more jobs in the Wisconsin economy. Despite the critical development work in which we are engaged, we see potential threats to this aspect of our mission and this element of the growth agenda. Among them, our competitive compensation is the competitive compensation issue. UW institutions are now more than 14% behind peer institution and faculty pay, and the gap is anticipated to grow over the next biennium, over the next year. How can we use our limited resources and increase flexibility to attract and retain top faculty and staff, who, by the way, are doing a lot of the research that's translating into economic advantage for our businesses in the marketplace. Similarly, do we need to be more concerned about our ability to recruit and enroll exceptional graduate students who support advanced research led by faculty members? Great faculty attract great graduate students. So to the extent that we lose a competitive advantage in terms of the faculty that we are able to attract to our system, we also lose those great graduate researchers. As UW campuses conduct more contract research, do we need to take steps to protect our objectivity while engaging in more and more vital, important public-private partnerships? I threw this in because we have to continually balance our involvement in research with our objectivity as a public higher education institution. While we certainly believe in a strong correlation between UW research and Wisconsin economic climate, we must ask ourselves, are we doing a good job of explaining the connection between research and jobs in a compelling and clear manner, particularly to policymakers, those individuals that we need to communicate better with? We heard some great examples from UW-Superior today that many of us hadn't heard before. That's certainly what I think would strengthen arguments that we are a relevant player in growing the Wisconsin economy, bringing more jobs here. Those are the questions as we work through more jobs. So I'll pause here and see if there are any comments on these questions.
You had asked, Michael, if any of the chancellors wanted to say anything, and why don't we turn to them to see if anybody has any comments, and then we'll go back to the Regents.
All right.
Michael asked me to give some thought to this, to add a few things. Quickly.
Can I point out, Rick, that I didn't have to twist your arm?
No, you didn't. But these days, Regent Falbo has been keeping me under control. So, we have at UW-Oshkosh, much like UW-Superior's wonderful examples this morning, entities that create jobs or create the basis for jobs directly in a very clear and immediate way. We have our Business Success Center, which helped over 70-some businesses last year, saved several of them from failing. Our Wisconsin Family Business Forum, our Environmental Research and Innovation Center. We also have a couple of things that we've been doing lately that are pretty unique in terms of public-private economic development partnerships. And I want to point out there is absolutely no state money in these, which is something maybe we should address. We have, at the enterprise level, we just purchased with 2 private sector hoteliers and restaurateurs the Downtown Hotel, 180-room hotel that's fallen in disrepair. It's connected to our Visitor and Convention Center. They did this through our foundation. We're doing a $9 million renovation of that. That will create immediately 150 to 200 construction jobs and dozens of hospitality jobs once it's up and running in January, and we're attracting more conventions downtown. So we'll be able to employ more of those outstanding UW-Stout hospitality majors. Someone's got to give them jobs. And then we have 3 biodigester projects going. One's completed and commissioned on our campus. This is a partnership we've had with Wiesmann Corporation from Germany. We have 2 others that are in their final stages of being implemented, one with Rosendale Dairy, a huge wet biodigester, and then one we will install at a small farm, the Allen Farm, called the Ercolina, or Titan 55 as we call it, to help with an experiment small farms throughout Wisconsin to see if they can use biodigesters to help them be more economically competitive. If we're successful, this is a demonstration project. We've talked to the Wiesmann Corporation. They're willing to locate their manufacturing of these biodigesters for the North American continent in our area if we can pick up about 5 orders. So if you know any small dairy farmers that want a biodigester, come send them to us and we'll sell them one. So these are, I think, outstanding examples. And what is a little frustrating, quite frankly, about these and many of others that our UW institutions are doing, there's no state money behind them. These are coming out of our hides. These are very innovative, creative, entrepreneurial things that are directly creating jobs in partnership with the private sector. And I just want to underscore in completing my remarks, there are many other things we're doing I could tell you about, but this thing about doing something to retain and support the talent we have in our faculty and staff is huge. The compensation issue is huge. I oftentimes, in talking with external stakeholder, business leaders, elected officials, and I tell them, you know, you tell me any industry in the state of Wisconsin that's gone through the last 5 or 6 years and increased their productivity 15 to 20%, whose employees have not received a raise, a pay plan in now 6 years, and really the future doesn't look very bright. Is there any such entity out there? So all these things we're talking about, these really unique and innovative things that Ready Committee is going to be looking at, that our campuses are doing, and to the extent we position ourselves with a biennial budget request to have more targeted state funding for those types of things, what concerns me is if we don't do something about the compensation to keep and help develop and attract that talent and replace it, these things aren't going to continue to work or be built upon. So that's my examples. Thank you.
No, well, I think that what I want to talk about very, very briefly is to underscore we are emerging research universities. We have the great Madison, and they've been there for a long, long time. We're trying to take teaching universities with 12-hour teaching loads and then squeeze research into that and make them productive. And that's very, very hard to do. At Stout, we were developing a biomedical device research center, and we're bringing in scientists to do the research. And so you have teaching faculty trying to work with research scientists, and there are conflicts about how they operate and how they work and what the expectations are. I mean, so I think it goes beyond what Rick is saying. This is a very, very complex situation, trying to take research schools and really make them more productive, or teaching schools, make them more productive as research schools. We have a 12-hour teaching load. That's very high. It's hard to drive that down with no state support. I think the pay schedules are pathetic right now. We're in the lower 12% in the nation of all state universities in the nation. So how do you attract people to come to a state that's promising no pay raises and expect them to perform? So I think the very complex problems, we're working on that. Our Discovery Center is very successful, but there are complexities that are hard to explain until you get on campus and see how you merge these two cultures, research and teaching. It's very difficult to do.
Michael, we are in the position of implementing our new strategic plan at the university, at Stevens Point. We're repositioning the university to make it more relevant and responsive to community problems and regional and state problems under the umbrella of Partnership for Thriving Communities. It has 4 initiatives. I'll just mention 2. One is a healthcare initiative that we are working with the CEOs of all the major healthcare systems in the state, as well as the major educators in healthcare at the UW School of Medicine and the Medical College of Wisconsin, for example. Just recently had all these partners on campus. We're partnering with our technical schools and the 2-year colleges in our area to implement this. This week we had 60 elected officials, state, local, and federal, and economic development executives on our campus talking about this new initiative. The second one is an economic development initiative where we want to develop more public-private partnerships. We want to learn how to be more entrepreneurial as a university and how to work with local and area businesses in developing jobs in central Wisconsin. And we're going to establish an Office of Economic Development and Entrepreneurship at the university.
Thank you.
Any questions up here now? Somebody was, Gary or Mark?
Just want to comment on, Mike, you'd indicated that sometimes goals kind of shift and change, and I think that's true, and there's a issue that's kind of been put on the table. I think Jim Morgan at WMC put it out there initially, but it feels like it's catching a lot of traction, and that's a job probability index. You know, when you enter a program, what's the probability that there's a positive career outcome at the end? And I think that's I think if we don't get in front of that, we're going to get beat up by that. There are great examples all over the place of, well, the logistics and transportation program here in Superior, I think, is an incredible example of that relationship with industry and what becomes of a program when you've got a really tight relationship. And certainly there are examples across the whole system of that. But I think that's something that we're going to hear a lot about, is that job probability index. And when we think about quality in terms of our principal customer, that being, I would argue, the student, I think time to career and that percentage or that ability to start that career are going to be at the forefront of some of that discussion that's going to be driven by industry. And if we can partner up with that and share what is not known about the programs in our system, we probably don't do a good enough job of marketing the tremendous success that we do have. And I'm just afraid if we don't get in front of that issue, we're going to get beat up badly.
Judy.
I would like to hear some discussion of the third bullet, preserving objectivity and knowing our value in public-private partnerships. That's an issue of academic integrity, I assume, and I'd like to hear someone speak to that.
Well, I'd love to speak to that, but it wouldn't be very useful. I threw this in as I was reading and preparing the piece. I thought, you know, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is academic integrity, right? We don't want to we want to preserve academic integrity, and I think if Mark Nook would be so kind, I think we do have in place protections that will allow for us to maintain integrity of our research processes.
Yeah. I think one of the, as I read through this particular question,
I want to look first at the public-private partnership. Our universities play many, many roles in educating students, and some of that is really to prepare them for a career. Another part of it, though, is to prepare them for civic life, and not just their work life. And that's something I think as we talk about engaging our partners and developing students who are now ready for work, that we not lose that piece either. And I think that's where this preserving our objectivity. We've got many roles to play as we educate a student beyond just training them for work. We've got to be careful or we'll become a four-year technical college. And that really isn't the end game at all. We want to be able to prepare those individuals ready to step into careers that require the critical thinking skills, the ability to work in groups and teams, all of the things that the liberal arts and liberal education is centered around. Preparing students for life beyond work as well. And as we go into these public-private partnerships, I think it's important for us to keep that message in front of our private partners and in front of everyone that's looking at what do we need out of higher education, and in particular, four-year and graduate higher education in the state of Wisconsin. So I think at its center, that's what we need to look at, is the broad overall context of what higher education is at the four-year and beyond.
And then there's the specific dimension of research.
Yes, and I was just going to jump in and say, Judy, I think it's a great question, and I think we have some experience in how you craft public-private partnerships to make them ethical and of appropriate value to all the parties in the partnership and those we seek to serve. But in some realms, this is kind of a brave new world for us, and I think we need to be careful, we need to be attentive, we need to be establishing good practices and policies around how we should do this. We need to do it. We're doing much more of it now than we ever did in the past. We will be doing yet more of it in the future. And it's part of the sort of overall blending in many ways of the public and the private spheres that's going on now in the country. So some of this is new. Madison, obviously, through entities like WARF, has huge and long and successful experience, and we can certainly learn from that. But there are areas now that are getting at new relationships that really haven't existed between the university before. And this is something between the university and outside entities before. This is something that's a not infrequent topic of national meetings of college and university presidents and partners, because it's on everybody's mind these days.
Thank you.
One other comment regarding the research piece. From 1980 till now, if you look at what's happened within many of our corporations, they've really cut their R&D and relied on the universities to pick that up. And we have done that as a nation. Our Research One institutions really have picked up that load for the most part and are carrying it for our country. And I think that's an important part for us to realize as we have these discussions about our economic impact, is we really are starting to fulfill for the country, have been for the last 30 years, the research and development capacity of the United States, because many of the industries have let it go. It's one of the things they cut.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Rick.
This dimension of this is a really good question, and I wanted to respond to it in terms of these partnerships, private-public sector partnerships we have. For example, the hotel and the convention center, and then with the biodigesters. Because it's been very interesting, and in the case of the hotel, the revenues generated from that particular project, it's run under our foundation. We've promised that they will be invested back in the community in a couple different ways, but one of the primary ways is to provide scholarships for Oshkosh High School graduates to come to UW-Oshkosh. Our private partners are delighted to be working with us because it's a greater good kind of thing. It's also allowing us to make the argument for TIF funding for this project, because it won't go without the TIF funding. So it's a public good notion there. And so in some ways, there's real advantage. I mean, there's dangers, too, between working in public-private partnerships, because the values in many ways are somewhat fundamentally different. But we're learning a lot from each other in that particular partnership. With the biodigester, particularly at Rosendale, this is big dairy, lots of issues around that. But there's a big challenge and problem, with the massive amounts of manure, quite frankly. I'm talking about in the future is a manure in Wisconsin, trust me. But in that particular one, their commitment is to, actually on site, on the Rosendale Dairy site, there'll be an education center that's totally separate from the dairy. They're not involved in that. They want the education center. And then we've already talked to Ray and Extension colleagues when that gets up and running to use that center for education in rural areas. And also we talked about providing funding as these things take off for a center for University Rural Development Sustainability Studies, a CURDS center. CURDS, okay. Well, but see, those make us feel, our faculty and staff and our students are all involved in these projects. Our biology students, our chemistry students, and the digesters, for example, our College of Business, that type of thing, make these things, easier to do and maintain not only the objectivity, but advance the value of developing the whole community, not just the economy, in terms of some of these things that we're doing with these private and public sector partners. So it's a great educational experience.
Okay.
Stronger communities. If you compare Wisconsin to other states, you'll see a remarkable difference in the way that our population is more evenly distributed across the state in small to mid-sized cities. In each of those tiger cities, as some folks call them, you'll find a vibrant UW campus. In every Wisconsin county, you'll find a trusted UW Extension faculty. By extending the boundaries of the university to the furthest boundaries of the state in the finest tradition of the Wisconsin idea, our colleges, universities, and extension networks enrich and enliven the economy of the regions in which they are located. For example, a 2009 study of the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh found that the institution's economic impact was approximately $500 million a year and yielded directly and indirectly approximately 9,000 jobs while generating about $37 million in tax revenue. In addition, the campus is a founding member and an active collaborative partner in New Era, the Northeast Wisconsin Educational Resource Alliance, the founding partner of New North, Inc., a regional economic development collective within the 17 counties of Northeast Wisconsin. The College of Letters and Sciences is linking faculty and student expertise with energy and agricultural companies and linked to innovations to develop, fund, and operate, as Rick pointed out, biodigester facilities producing clean energy from methane. UW institutions participate actively in economic development entities like New Era, the Milwaukee 7, which is in southeast Wisconsin, Chamber of Commerce in their cities, and they also help address areas of state opportunities and need. As you are aware, UW-Milwaukee has been working with the city of Milwaukee to address public health needs and is working to develop strong freshwater sciences and public health schools on their campuses. UW system institutions embody the ideals of truly engaged public universities, identifying needs in the community, involving citizens, and leveraging UW expertise to enact positive research-based solutions. Additionally, our communities are strengthened by the people and talent that the university attracts. The vast majority, more than 81%, Judy, to your point, more than 81% of graduates who start out as Wisconsin residents remain here after graduation. The university also brings in non-resident students who enhance diversity and vibrancy. These students also increase income for the state as they pay for housing and food and entertainment while attracting other family members. Earlier, I mentioned that the correlation between educational attainment and per capita, I mentioned the correlation between educational attainment and per capita income. This slide makes the point, while also showing the corresponding relationship to unemployment rates. Pretty consistently, those with more education not only earn more once they are employed, but they are less likely to become unemployed. The picture for unemployment in Wisconsin is even clearer than the national picture. Even during the economic recession, residents with a bachelor's degree or higher, represented by the yellow bar to the right side of each stack, had half the level of unemployment of the state as a whole, and significantly lower rates than those with less education. It appears that having a degree not only assures you of making a better living as a career, but it also arms you or inoculates you to some extent against economic downturns. What does this mean for our planning in the future becomes our question. It means that UW system will have to play a central role in building the economic vitality of the Wisconsin communities by providing skilled, educated workforce to create and attract new businesses. This will move the state from where it is today to where it needs to be, and it also will act as a buffer for communities against economic downturns. So how do we strengthen our communities? We strengthen it by having a profound impact on the local economies, creating jobs through our research, creating economic activity through our research, and we also produce graduates that earn at a much higher extent than those who don't have four-year degrees, and they stay in the workforce. Any questions on how we're impacting communities around the state, or any observations about those things that we might want to consider doing differently? If not, I'll move on.
Keep going.
I'll move on to access and affordability. Entry into the economy of the early 21st century demands a higher degree of educational attainment. Gone are the days when a high school degree would be sufficient for finding a good job, a good paying job. Therefore, it seems to me that we must be mindful of the impact that our policies have on the ability of individual Wisconsin families to attend, family members to attend university. Our university education should remain within the grasp of working class families in Wisconsin. The UW has ensured that tuition is moderate and affordable for Wisconsin families. In 2009-11, the state of Wisconsin provided for a tuition assistance grant, which offsets the cost of tuition increases for students of needs from families from incomes of $60,000 or less who did not receive a Wisconsin Higher Education Grant or a WEG grant. There was no increase in funding this biennium for that program, but the UW system still continues to provide base grants to students who fit in this category. Colleges and universities are also improving quality while reducing costs of educating students in many different ways. UW-Madison, for example, engaged Huron Consulting a year ago to determine the best use of its limited resources and have worked creatively to find ways to reduce costs within the university that can then be invested into the core mission. Other UW institutions are involved and engaged in benchmarking, lean manufacturing process reviews, and looking for other opportunities to collaborate with one another in cost reduction measures. In other words, we're looking for ways to ensure that we keep the cost of college education down. We're doing everything in within our control to keep costs down. Institutions are looking for ways to be more responsible stewards by collaborating with each other. UW-Stout, for example, is working with UW-Eau Claire and UW-River Falls on selling surplus properties and other initiatives. In addition, UW institutions continue to make use of the flexibilities granted under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership through the last budget, which was Act 32. The 2013-15 biennial budget will also include additional requests for flexibilities in purchasing and capital, and in our capital program as a way to continue to invest in the university's core mission. To the extent that we can control purchasing, we can save dollars that we can invest in our core mission. The BSN at Home program is a collaboration of UW institutions, Milwaukee, Madison, Eau Claire, Green Bay, and Oshkosh, that allows students to take the majority of required coursework online, culminating in a 4-year degree in nursing. We're providing an alternative for individuals who might want a nursing degree to coming to our campuses in a more traditional way by having an online portal for them. This is yet another way that we're making the university system more accessible. I already mentioned the UW River Falls Hudson Center, which opened in August 2010, which provides a degree completion program in business administration for adult students, as well as other graduates in the continuing education area. The colleges and universities are also working to welcome place and time-bound students in innovative ways. For example, institutions are encouraging adults to return to school by expanding their prior learning assessment programming with the support of a $800,000, I think it was a Lumina grant that we received. Correct, Mark? It was Lumina. The UW system hopes the grant will help increase assessments from 300 annually back in 08-09 to 1,600 by 2015. A study by the Council for Adults and Entrepreneurial Learning indicates that adult students who receive their credits through PLA may be more likely to persist and complete a higher education degree than those who do not. So we're creating portals, affordable portals, for non-traditional students to get back to our universities, to attain their degree, to get back into the economy, to command a higher salary, and hopefully to insulate themselves somewhat from the vulgarities of the economy, as one Fed executive once said. Institutions also developing transfer plans to connect students to their educational goals. Students now can evaluate how their courses, what courses they have, and transfer to specific majors or programs within other institutions within the system through our transfer system. And I forgot the name of the transfer system. Mark, help me with that. Transfer Information System, TIS. TIS. Students can evaluate how they're doing by going online, going through an evaluation process, and then make the necessary decisions about whether or not they may want to transfer to a respective major at another university. These are just a few examples of how UW system institutions are demonstrating their commitment to access and affordability. The question is, are there some other things that we need to take a look at? Financial aid, for example, is a problem for us. As we are reaching a deeper and wider cut of Wisconsin citizens to increase educational access, financial aid becomes more important. Financial aid over the last several bienniums has been flat. We can do all we can to ensure that we operate as efficiently as we can, but at some point we're going to have to ask for an investment from the state in the form of GPR to ensure that our colleges and universities are accessible to working class families in the state of Wisconsin. Any ideas, comments? as we struggle with this issue. Troy, you look like you really want to jump in.
You know, just a thought. You know, it seems to me there's more creative ways for students to get an affordable education, and it may be taking some general education requirements through UW colleges or online programs. We have a senior in high school right now who is going through the final stages of his college decision, and I'm just amazed by how many of his classmates just have never really thought of the affordability aspect of college. You know, their mentality is, well, I'm going to go to college, I really don't care what the cost is because I'll get a job later and we'll be able to pay back that debt. You know, one thought is, it seems like we need to educate our students sooner, you know, at the high school level of the impact of college costs. It just seems to be there's just kind of a void of that knowledge right now. And secondly, I guess I'd like to see more promotion of creative ways, maybe through the transfer programs, whether it be UW colleges or the tech schools, as a path into your four-year degree. I think if there's visibility to that, I think that would be a help.
Well, I agree that you know, we do have a challenge as we go forward. There are households out there in which we know we have bright, capable students who are going to graduate from high school and then want to go on to college. We need to get to those students earlier in their educational, K-12 educational career, Troy. I agree. And we had programs, at least one program, that came from the university. It was designed to do exactly that. That program, however, is not going to be funded to the future. It's called the Covenant Program. It's not going to be funded to the future. It was designed to talk to 8th graders about what they needed to do in high school to prepare themselves to get into college. Not just how you need to do in the classroom, but you need to think about how you're going to pay for college. Parents need to think about how you're going to pay for college. What's the strategy, right? What schools, what areas might their children be interested in? Is a public school the right environment for them? Big school, small school? All those questions, that's what the program was designed to do. We have to ask ourselves, is this an investment that we as a system want to make from our scarce resources? Or do we petition the state to help us, whether it's the Covenant Program or some other program, to get at the very issue that you're talking about, Troy? Because it is very real. It is something that we need to work through and try to help those families with. We have a lot of kids who are coming to our system who don't have parents who went to college, who had the opportunity to go to college. They came from families like my own family, like some of your families. Many of you are first. You were first in your families to graduate from college. An important challenge that we have. And we have a financial aid issue that we have to work through. Those are all the questions that we're thinking through, and I'm glad to hear that this is something that is important to the Board of Regents.
Any other comments for Mike or questions?
We'll move on to quality. We've talked a little bit about quality also. And quality is one of the key factors that distinguishes the University of Wisconsin institutions from others, quite frankly, other systems around the country. We educate students and are responsible to the state of Wisconsin for doing so. Our shareholders are the people of this great state. And when we think about quality, our customers are those kids who present themselves at our doors every fall. Those kids who expect that at the end of 4 to 6 years that they're going to receive an education sufficient for them to get into the workforce, to find a job, and to stay there for a very long time, to command a salary to allow them to live a good life in the state of Wisconsin. And it is in the state of Wisconsin that they're living. 81% of them, as I indicated earlier, actually live here in the state of Wisconsin. Quality is important. You know what? We did a survey of alumni from the University of Wisconsin institution prepared by the American Council on Education, and it indicated that alumni were very positive about their UW experience. The survey responses demonstrated an exceptional level of satisfaction on the part of alumni who had graduated from our schools. So at least one group of our customers right now, at that time when we did the snapshot, they're very satisfied with the quality that we have. UW-Madison is, here's another quality indicator. UW-Madison is ranked number 10 in the nation in the top public universities by U.S. News and World Reports. We love U.S. News and World Report when their ranking is high. We loathe them when they don't give us the kind of rankings that we'd like. But for this purposes, they got it right. UW-Madison ranked third in research spending in 2010 with $1.1 billion. They're in the top 3 nationally in large number in terms of large universities, major research universities in the country. UW-Madison also ranks 4th in the number of graduates who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. We've heard all these statistics before. So UW-Madison is doing some things right. Here's another quality, I think, statistic. 7 comprehensive universities are listed. 7 of our comprehensive universities are listed in the top 20 public Midwest regional universities. In other words, more than 1/3 of the top 20 public institutions in the Midwest are UW system institutions. UW-La Crosse was 2nd, Eau Claire was 5th, Stevens Point 9th, Whitewater 11th, Stout 17, UW River Falls 18, and UW-Oshkosh is 20th. 1/3. The quality is there. The question, though, is can we keep professors in our classroom and labs who provide the quality, right? What technology, equipment, labs, and space do students need to be prepared for the workforce? Do we offer the right high-quality options for today's adult non-traditional students? And we have to continually think about, so how does this non-traditional student definition change? In other words, how does the market change from time to time, right, as we go forward in trying to understand what are really those non-traditional students? So, once again, I'll pause and take any input from the board as it relates to quality.
Tim, sorry.
Great presentation, and I'm glad we're focusing on quality a little bit. And obviously, it's hard to argue with the fact that the University of Wisconsin system has done a wonderful job of hitting the bases that are out there to be hit. And by this comment, I don't mean to demean that. I just mean to focus on the comment I made earlier about defining our customers and defining what those customers want as quality. And you focused on one of our main customers, which are the students who, as you say, present themselves at our doors every semester. And the measure of the survey of the students who said they had a great experience and a high value is very important. But in my mind, I contrast that to, or I say to myself, okay, about 2005, the Wisconsin Alumni Association did a survey like unto this one, but what we did is compared non-minority students, essentially white students, to the experience of students of color who are graduates. Okay. And what struck me and many others from that survey is that there was no statistical difference between the reactions of graduates, no matter what ethnic background. But yet we can't keep students of color in the university. And so it says to me, okay, that was a great survey. I'm glad it came out. It taught us something about what the people who actually made it through think about the university. But from that group of customers, there are some who present themselves and then say, you know, I'm not real happy about this place, and I'm out of here. Or maybe they say something else. Maybe they say I can't afford to be here. Maybe they say I can't hack it here. Who knows? But we haven't, you know, it's doing a survey about all the people who were successful may or may not be an indicator of an opportunity or a challenge. And that is, that's the kind of thing that I guess to use this one more time before we get absolutely new regents on the board, as a newbie, I'm wondering, are we missing assessments that might provide us with some additional opportunities? And I just want to ask, I don't want to go around you, but Chancellor Sorensen, you know, a campus that won the Baldrige Award, obviously had to identify customers and their needs, and maybe there's some wisdom from that quarter about how we might go about improving our assessment process.
I'm not sure I had that wisdom, but we did at Stout. We identified the customer as a student, which was in higher ed circles. That's very unpopular. We got criticized for that a lot by other colleagues, other campuses for doing that. We did that, and we made sure that we surveyed students and what they wanted, needed, how we delivered it, and were they satisfied. I think we have always fallen short on students of color, minority students. We try to meet those needs, but haven't done so successfully. But we tried very carefully in the Baldrige process to identify internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, then modify and adjust our programs to meet those needs. And I think we have done a fairly credible job of doing that, although that's something you work on all the time. But the Baldrige is I put my plug to the Baldrige. It's now going to be unfunded by the federal government. But it's one of the finest, I think, techniques to survey who you are. The self-assessment probably is what we all should do: assess leadership, assess who our stakeholders are, find measures to identify what they are. So really, it's a fine tool to use. Difficult to use, but fine. So we've tried that. We still use that. We're a Baldrige campus. We kind of transformed ourselves in that process. But the key, the core of what we have always done is to identify the student as our customer and try to satisfy that student body.
Look, yeah, of course you can. Chancellor, then, do you think that the processes you use on your campus could be transferable to the system in general, and would it be worthwhile from the system's point of view in looking at these kinds of questions to do so?
I'm really biased at this point, and I think it's transportable to any campus. I think a system like the UW is made for it because of the structure of it and the structure of the Baldrige. And it's very useful because you have to ask very, very difficult questions of yourself and answer those questions. Like, you know, what is your leadership style, and what do your stakeholders think about that leadership? And what is your planning process, and what is the result of that planning process? You have to really penetrate deeply into the organization and ask very penetrating questions and hard questions, and then admit when you're not where you should be and try to find out how to resolve those issues. Yeah, I think it's a very good process.
Sorry.
Well, you know, certainly UW-South has done some great work in the area, but responding specifically to your observation about underrepresented minorities and how they feel, particularly those that are not successful in completing the coursework and then going on to graduate from a UW system institution. One of the things that we do is we are mindful and intentional in keeping our eye on that very group. Vicki Washington and Mark Nook and his team have done some very good work in that area. They've worked with the chancellors and other leaders on universities, throughout our system to ensure that we look at high-impact practices. That is, how do we work to ensure that those underrepresented minorities that enter actually go on to their second year, knowing that if we get them to the second year, that there's a higher likelihood, or they graduate at a higher rate. Vicki and our team have been working around issues of climate on our campuses. That is, when a student of color presents, in the fall, how are they received? Are they, do they feel like they're part of the university community? That there are places and individuals, or there are individuals that they can see who can help them along the way, to help them with the challenges that students inevitably have, whether they're students of color or not. So we are mindful, Regent, of those challenges, and we're trying to do whatever we can within our resource limitations to make investments in programs that are designed to graduate more students of color. And as we go forward, and increasingly more students of color and more what we call underrepresented minority students are presenting themselves in our system, we're looking to be more aggressive and ensuring that they actually graduate.
Mike, I just want to remind you we have just about 15 minutes, so I want to make sure you stay on schedule. Judy has a question, but I didn't want to lose sight of our noon deadline.
It's not a question. It's just one more comment on that issue. Since I've been on the board now 7 years, and I very much want to affirm the emphasis that the system has given in that area, although we know that we have a lot more to do. And I think this needs to continue to be a priority, and I would be pretty certain that it will. We must do better in that area, and I think that many of us are well aware of that. And if Tony were here in the room, I think he probably also would join me in saying that a lot of this also has to do with our connections with K-12 and what we need to be doing there too.
Tim.
And I apologize if I gave the impression that I thought the system is in any way lacking effort in the area of recruiting and maintaining students of color. I've been involved in many of those efforts, and I know how hard everybody's working to do it. I just use that as an example of effort and result, and I didn't mean to imply that there was any problem.
I understand you were coming from a very good place. I also know of your work, so I absolutely knew that you were coming from a good place. You've actually put your resources where your feelings are on this issue, and that's the best indication that you really believe of the value of having a diverse, university system. So, thank you. I'm gonna move on here and talk a little bit about performance. The UW has a long history of being accountable to the state and the citizens. The UW system was one of the first systems in the country, in fact, to actually create an accountability report. And that report has been done every year for a very long time. In fact, the report for this past year is going to be the subject of a discussion before the board, I think, in June. So the accountability report that we traditionally bring before the board will be talked about in June. In addition to the traditional accountability measures that we have in place, as Kevin pointed out earlier, we have accountability measures, what we call the Act 32 accountability measures, which came as a result of last time's budget, the budget that we're in right now. We're planning to present our early thoughts on how we will address the accountability measures that are required in Act 32 also. So we'll have more of a discussion regarding performance. But none of the achievements that we have discussed can be achieved without none of the goals that we have or the achievements that we've talked about can be we're going to be able to reach unless we have adequate resources. And if you look at what has happened over the last 30 years, and this is really a revisit of something that Mark presented during his very well-done presentation on access and affordability or cost containment. Over the last 30 years, We have not seen the kind of investment that we would have liked from the state of Wisconsin and the UW system. And yet we've achieved quite a bit despite that. If you look at over the last 30 years, what you see is that what has happened is that when GPR goes away, student tuition fills the void. We've been able to go forward largely based on investments that we've been able to make through our tuition. And we've been able to keep tuition modest. As Mark pointed out, if you look at tuition increases in our system versus other universities around the country, what you'll find is that our increases have been very modest over the last 30 years, and we still are in the lower percentile in terms of our peers around the country, in the middle in terms of our peers on tuition costs. But it's mildly clear that there are resource needs that the university system has that have to be addressed in this budget. I point this out so that you understand that we need to work very purposefully in ensuring that over this next budget we get the kind of resources that we need from the state of Wisconsin, that the state of Wisconsin invests. We're willing to make the commitment that we'll meet the performance measures that they put before us so long as we get the investment necessary to drive quality, to drive access and affordability, so that our schools are not just, a distinctive group of elite universities, but universities that still have their doors open to children of working class families in the state of Wisconsin. That's our challenge. We've talked about the importance of student of having access and affordability to high-quality UW degree programs. We discuss the impact that our colleges, universities, and extension networks have on our state's economy, job creation, and how to create stronger communities, particularly in those communities and regions where our universities sit. We also have talked about some of what has happened in the primary, in terms of primary revenues sources that support these efforts, tuition and GPR funding, and how we report our performance measures. We've lined all that up. Given those objectives and the needs of our state economy, are we focused on the right priorities is going to be the question as we go forward. On the right priorities, as defined by policymakers in this state who make the decisions about how investments are going to be made. And how can we shape our 2013-15 budget requests in a way that best reflects the board's ideas and priorities. So I'll stop now, and
you don't have to.
I'll stop. Largely because I'm out of time, and I have no more words on the paper.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael, very, very much. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate it very much.
You bet.
You ready to go then? Frida's not. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Lunch, for which we're now a couple minutes early, is in the Jim Dan Hill Library. It's my understanding that if we exit the doors at the bottom of the stairs, there will be signs, students, and the Yellow Jacket mascot Buzz escorting us to lunch. Lunch includes 12 student displays that highlight the UW-Superior liberal arts experience. Please feel free to either visit some student displays before sitting down to eat, or eat first and then visit those displays. We will all return at 1 o'clock, please, and we're going to, at that time, honor Chancellor Levin-Stankiewicz. Thank you. We are ready to start.
My I just want to let you know that I am online.
Oh, hello, Jose. Oh, welcome back.
You're next.
Our first order of business this afternoon is one of our bittersweet times, I guess we would call it. So I'm going to turn to Regent Many Deeds to present a resolution of appreciation.
Ready for me?
I'm ready for you.
All
yes,
right.
sir.
We hope. It was the healthiest meal I've had in about 10 years, but it was good. It seems like it was only yesterday, but in fact it was 2 years ago that I first met Brian. I was appointed to the Board of Regents. I was in Eau Claire, and he took the step of calling me to see if he could get to know me. And while he had met most of the important people he thought in Eau Claire, he hadn't met me yet. So he was trying to remedy that. And we met in a small cafe in downtown Eau Claire. And immediately I felt a connection because we ordered the same thing for breakfast. And then we started talking about how we grew up and where we'd been. And I realized that I didn't have a thing in common with this guy, and I didn't know where he was coming from. No, I'm just kidding. I realized that we had similar backgrounds. I realized that we'd been brought up in similar ways. And while he was from New York and I was raised in South Dakota and northern Wisconsin, that we had a lot in common. He invited me to the campus for several things. And it didn't take long for me to conclude that he was someone who was a great communicator and is a great communicator. He is someone who cares about his campus community, the students, the people who work there in all phases. He knew them, greeted them, got along with them, and had respect for them, and they had respect for him. I also realized that he was a great advocate for our system when we were having our issues last year. He presented our system's position to the Chamber of Commerce and other groups in our area, and I was very, very impressed with the way he was able to do that and with the relationships he had built in the community. Personally, I think the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire is going to miss you, I'm going to miss you, and the community is going to miss you. But I know you've got to move on, so in keeping with our time schedule, I'll read the resolution. The Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System Resolution of Appreciation, Chancellor Brian Levin Stankiewicz. Whereas Brian Levin Stankiewicz served as the Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire from 2006 to 2012, infusing a student-first approach into all major initiatives and decisions, especially the Blue Gold Commitment, a unique partnership between students and the university to provide high-impact educational experiences to all UW-Eau Claire students, and whereas Brian oversaw the successful reaccreditation of the university by the Higher Learning Commission and led a collaborative strategic planning effort that resulted in a new mission statement and an 8-year centennial plan which has guided annual priority setting and budget decisions, and whereas in support of the university system's growth agenda, Brian oversaw enrollment growth from 10,766 in 2006 to 11,234 in 2011, created the NanoSTEM initiative and a major in material science, and launched the system's first Bachelor of Professional Studies degree. And whereas Brian enhanced a university-wide focus on equality, diversity, and inclusiveness that resulted in an increase in the percentage of underrepresented minority students from 3.2% of new freshmen in 2005 to 8.1% in 2011, and also supported the creation of Blue Gold Beginnings, a pre-college access program for more than 2,000 underrepresented 5th grade through 12th grade students. And whereas Brian reflected the university's values of stewardship and sustainability by becoming a signatory of the American College and University President's Climate Commitment
and witnessed under his tenure the university energy decline by 19.4%. That's the university's energy use decline. Whereas Brian undertook creation of the first ever campus facilities master plan, which received a Planning and Analysis Award from the American Society of Landscape Architects, and developed nearly $100 million in campus construction projects, including a new student center, education building, and children's center. And whereas Brian concluded the university's first comprehensive campaign, which exceeded the campaign goal by raising more than $54 million, and during his tenure, the university received the largest single gift in its history, $4.3 million. In all 6 years of his chancellorship, annually raised more than $4 million in gifts. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System hereby offers thanks to Brian Levin Stankiewicz for his outstanding service as Chancellor of UW-Eau Claire, and wishes him well as he continues his career as President of Westminster College in Utah.
Thank you. Special thanks to Regent Many Deeds, who's really become a good friend to all the campuses, but particularly to those of us at UW-Eau Claire. You know, about a year ago or so, I started to think, well, what's the next stage in my life? And I looked around at the people most recently hired here in Wisconsin, other than with respect to Renee. I looked at Dennis and Ray and Bernie, and I said, I think my hair's too long. So I cut it down, and it worked. I got up before the chamber last Thursday. We had a chamber breakfast on campus, and as I was getting up to speak, my wife said, "You're going to be nice, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." So I was getting up this morning. She said, "You're going to be nice, aren't you?" I didn't answer yet. Now, I want to thank, first of all, the Regents. First of all, for having the faith in asking me to lead a wonderful campus in Eau Claire, and for supporting that leadership over the years, from, I remember Jesus Salas, who was on my search committee, to Ed. We've gotten to know many of you on a very personal level. We had Aaron Wingate, of whom we were particularly proud at Eau Claire, who's now off on a Truman Fellowship internship in Washington, and represented not only Eau Claire, but all the students of this state extremely well. All of you have, with whom I've had the chance to work, and I haven't gotten to know the new regents very well, but all of you with whom I've gotten the chance to work have listened, have given me the time whenever I've asked for that time, and have asked difficult questions, particularly Regent Falbo, and around our differential tuition especially. But asked this difficult question, but in the end supported the things that we needed to do for our campus, and supported them wholeheartedly, and have made differences for us in terms of our physical facilities, our differential tuition, and our academic programs. My thanks, too, to Kevin and his leadership of openness and a willingness to hear criticisms, and we all know I've been full of them, and to really get to a better response to the problems we faced as chancellors and as a system through debate and working through our differences. Also to the system staff, who are extremely dedicated to higher education in Wisconsin and to the well-being of the state of Wisconsin, and to our campus needs. And I've got to, because so much of my tenure was engaged in the development of new facilities and improved facilities, I've really got to give a nod to David Miller, who has been really our go-to guy on so much of this, so much of the work we've done, and working with not only Regents, but DSF and other state agencies and contractors. So, David, my hat's off to you. Over the 6 years, our foundations at all of our campuses have become increasingly important. Private funding for our physical facilities, our faculty development, faculty excellence is increasing. I urge you to work with those organizations and free them from some of the constraints that they feel have limited their ability to work on behalf of their campuses. These foundations are filled with people who absolutely love higher education, but truly love our campuses and the communities in which we work. So treasure them and help them do what they feel is best for their campuses. My fellow chancellors, both those here and many who have either retired or gone elsewhere, my thanks. Particularly Rick and Chuck, my senior members in this crew, have been generous with their advice and mentorship, and I've appreciated that. We have a great relationship. It's one of mutual respect, and it's one of healthy competition. And when the competition gets unhealthy, we fortunately have a tremendous lineup of provosts who are there to pick up the pieces from us and make sure everything works in spite of us sometimes. And so my hat's off to them as well. I've learned a great deal from each of my colleagues, and I hope that I've added something to their experience as well. You know, today is really all about Renée and the campus we're visiting today, and it should be. And I feel like an interloper, so I'm sorry, Renée, but I do have to say it's my biggest thanks to the campus at UW-Eau Claire. It's really been a privilege to serve an extraordinary campus, one with, of course, the largest marching band in the state of Wisconsin, and one that, more than that, has an extraordinary culture that's been built up over generations, and each of our campuses has its own culture. I've almost daily go to my car and say to myself, did I really see that happen? Did I really hear that person say what they said? Because it's all about student success. It's all about focus on the quality of our education. It's on our unique mission. And as a result, we have great support from our community. All of our legislative delegations have been supportive of our efforts. Doesn't matter the party. We've been fortunate to have majority party delegations in all the sessions I've been here for. And of course, our foundation. And mostly our faculty and our staff and our students have just been fantastic. We have Jeff Peterson here representing our faculty rep, and our provost, Pat Klein, really represent an outstanding group of people who have gone so far above and beyond that I couldn't even define how far above they've gone. Eau Claire, like each of our campuses, needs your help to aggressively support and assure the recognition of the value of public higher education in Wisconsin. Most importantly, it needs your support in continuing the effort that was begun last year with this Wisconsin Idea Partnership to really free up our campuses to be, use a catchword, be all that they can be, and to give them the wherewithal to do that. I've certainly expressed my frustrations over the years with restrictions and limits, but mine are really just the tip of the iceberg. Where we really need to focus is on our faculty and our staff, who every day are working hard to provide the highest quality education they can for our students. Oftentimes in an increasingly difficult environment with fewer resources, with a negative public rhetoric and dialogue about their work, and with compensation restrictions that demoralize, have a growing impact on our ability to attract and retain talent, and ultimately are going to threaten the culture that is the greatest asset that we have within our campuses, a culture of really caring about our students, caring about their work and about each other. So I urge you to create for our campuses and for our university system, and particularly for our faculty, our staff, and our students, an environment in which you can encourage innovation and experimentation that rewards achievement and that values their contribution. I think if you do so, you will preside over a system of higher education that will simply excel beyond any of your expectations. I thank you for the privilege of serving this state, the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, Board of Regents, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and good luck. I have only one quick announcement before we break up into the committee meetings prior to the inauguration, and that is I've been informed that our staff is going to try to send us committee reports digitally for the first time. So everybody tonight, we're giving it a first shot, so everybody who has access to iPads, phones, whatever, please look at them tonight and see what's there. We're also bringing hard copy tomorrow for those who might not have such access, but we're going to give it a shot, right, Jane? All right? And our goal is to make this work and to streamline our meetings as you go forward. So look for it tonight. Reports from the committees digitally. Thank you very much. And we're ready to go to the committees.
We are. Yeah.